Chapter 1965 Chisi Ling, Part 2. The Cipra family, the Naruto family, and others fell silent. They leaned back in their chairs, exchanging glances. Lieutenant General Brent puffed out his chest, exuding confidence. From his observations, their body language indicated a hint of fear. Whether it was the formidable power of the Dawn Principality or other concerns, these top cabinet members of the Chiss territory were becoming wary. Brent seized the moment, adding, "In addition, we are also facing the threat of Mongol, the god of decay. Confronting this monster that ruthlessly devours everything, we should unite based on both emotion and reason. If we can locate their home planet and completely destroy it, it would be a great benefit for the people of Chisland." At this point, a member of the Cipra family asked, "So, what do you want?" Brent smiled kindly. "Since we are here to make friends, we naturally don't have any clear demands. As we interact more, we will understand each other's needs. However, if I must specify, there are probably two things." He raised two fingers and continued. "First, I hope that the Principality of Dawn and Chisland can establish a joint combat command. This command will solely focus on combating Mongar and will never target any third party. The representatives of our army will be myself, the 2nd Exploration Fleet, and the commander of the 1st Exploration Fleet, Lieutenant General He Ru. We will share all information about Mongar and are willing to deploy sufficient troops to combat this threat." The Naruto family frowned. "Sufficient troops? Does this mean the Principality of Dawn wants to station troops in Chisi territory?" Brent quickly waved his hand. Haha. It's not that extreme. We are very cautious about actions that might cause misunderstandings. The size of our army will be determined by Chisland. If you find Mongar's home planet and request 10,000 troops, then we will send 10,000 troops. Of course, if you need 10 million battle robots, then—" He paused, then smiled kindly. "Haha, it's not impossible." The faces of the 9 members of Chisling's cabinet turned grim. What did this mean? A demonstration of power? Claiming to have 10 million combat robots ready? Even if they had them, how would they transport them here? This is chaos, an unknown star field, not the Hydia trade route. "You mean to say you can send 10 million combat robots here at will?" the Saberson family asked. 10 million battle robots could be used against Mongar, but they could also be used against the Chiss. "How would you send them here?" the Naruto family asked darkly. "This is the second point." Lieutenant General Brent raised his second finger. "To facilitate communication, we hope to establish a transit base on a remote planet. We will build the base with your help. Of course, all this will be compensated. Although my spaceship has limited transportation capacity, our database is full of various technological blueprints. If you need them, you can copy and take them." Establish a transit base? The Cipra family's expressions changed. "Where? The location is up to you. If you want us farther away, then farther it is. If you want us closer, then closer. I just want to say that if there is a planet suitable for a colony, living on a planet is naturally the best. It doesn't have to be a perfect planet. We have the technology to modify the atmosphere. Give us some time, and we can improve the planet's environment." You establish a transfer base, and then what? Are you capable of transporting 10 million combat robots? The Naruto family was clearly on edge. They kept pressing about these 10 million combat robots, needing to confirm whether Brent was exaggerating or if the Dawn Principality truly possessed such capabilities. "That's right. Once the transfer base is built, if needed, we can start sending the combat robots over." Brent nodded sincerely. "Didn't I just mention? We have an army of 4.1 million combat robots on Levick planet. You don't think General He Ru transported all those robots here, do you? Our spaceship is large, but it can't hold that many." The Naruto family asked with a hint of suspicion. "I ask again, how will you send them here?" "Oh, it's not a big deal." Lieutenant General Brent waved his hand nonchalantly. "It's just a Stargate." "What did you say?" The Naruto family stood up, almost shouting. "Stargate. There's one on Levick planet." Lieutenant General Brent's tone was relaxed, as if he were discussing something as mundane as a backyard project. If it hadn't been for the Mongar infection, there would be not just 4.1 million combat robots on Levick planet, but 20 million. The Naruto family slowly sank back into their seat. barely suppressing the urge to call the guards and have everyone executed on the spot. Their body trembled slightly. Stargate! If their understanding of the term was correct, then a Stargate meant exactly that, a man-made wormhole, the ultimate method of travel connecting any 2 points in the universe. Naturally, they didn't know that the Stargate of the Dawn Principality was far from a true wormhole, but the implications were nearly the same. The Naruto family glanced at the Cipra family, whose faces were equally pale. In fact, all 9 cabinet members wore similar expressions. Stargate. The significance of this revelation was unmistakable. Qixi Ling is already aware of Dawn Planet's friendship. The Cipra family reluctantly uttered the word friendship. We have prepared state guest-level accommodations. Please, go and rest. We still have some details to discuss regarding the establishment of diplomatic relations with the Principality of Dawn, said the Inrokini family. No problem, but please forgive our presumption. Because Planet Levick is constantly threatened by Mongar, we hope to receive some intelligence on this matter, Lieutenant General Brent requested. Of course, the Naruto family nodded. End of chapter. Chapter 1966, The Terrible Chiseling. After Brent and the others left, the Naruto family turned to Admiral Chiara and said, "Send someone to deliver the information about Mongar Mengar to them. This should stabilize them for a while." All of it? Admiral Chiara asked coldly, her tone devoid of any pretense. The tension between the Eliz family, to which General Chiara belonged, and the Naruto family was palpable, both being dominant military factions with sharp conflicts. It was, after all, the Eliz family's conspiracy that led to Misro Naruto Thrawn's expulsion from the Chiss territory. "How much to give them is up to you," the Naruto family replied with equal coldness. "Just remember, the threat of Mongar Mengar is the Chiss territory's top priority. Give it all to them. It is our duty to attack Mongar Mengar," interjected a member of the Eliz family, eager to assert their righteousness over the Naruto family. Yes. Admiral Chiara nodded to the Eliz family, then saluted the 9-member cabinet around her before turning to leave. Once she was gone, only the 9 members remained in the opulent hall. "We should immediately deploy all our fleets and destroy them. We must not let them build the Stargate here," exclaimed a member of the Chaff family, slamming the table. "Do you know what will happen if you do that, idiot?" retorted a member of the Eliz family, turning to glare at the Chaff family. "If we cut off contact and the Dawn Principality realizes their exploration fleet has lost contact, they will send another one. They could build Stargates in places we don't even know exist. When their fleet arrives, we won't even know what's happening. Instead of letting them build the Stargate elsewhere, it's better to have it within our monitoring scope. This way, while we may not have complete control, at least we won't be in the dark." The Naruto family surprisingly agreed with the Eliz family. From what they said, it seems they need our help to build the Stargate. This suggests that constructing the Stargate requires a massive amount of resources, which they cannot carry on their own, noted the Cipla family, who controlled resources and were very sensitive to such matters. "What if we block their resource supply and prevent them from building the Stargate?" "I think this will only anger them, and no matter how much we delay, the Stargate will eventually be built. It's just a matter of time," the Saberson family countered. The Brast family slammed the table and shouted, "Have you ever considered that they might just be a bunch of liars? The Stargate could be a ruse to create panic and demand resources from us." "But can you prove that it's false?" the Naruto family asked. "Even if there's only a 1% chance, what if it's true? And ultimately, if they are lying, what can they do with all our resources? They can't take them back to the outside world." "I think General Eliz Alalani Ziara should be punished first." The Mies family stood up and declared loudly. "It's because she brought back the people from the Dawn Principality that we are in this passive situation. We should initiate accountability proceedings against Ziara immediately." The Mies family had a close relationship with the Naruto family, and before Thrawn was adopted by the Naruto family, he was actually born into the Mies family. Therefore, the Mies family also harbored resentment towards the Eliz family for Thrawn's expulsion. I think you should remember that after receiving the wide-area communication signal from this fleet, we all agreed to send a fleet to make contact, the Inrokini family said coldly. I think since this is the case, it is better to sell a favor to the Dawn Principality, the Inrokini family continued, their tone measured and strategic. Principality of Dawn. This way, at least when we interact with this powerful neighbor, our lives will be easier, the Saberson family stated, leaving everyone present stunned. Silence fell over the room. Indeed, although they had differing opinions, there was one topic they unanimously avoided, engaging in a direct confrontation with the Principality of Dawn to drive them away completely, ensuring they would never dare to covet Chiss land again. While the Chiss are powerful, they are not arrogant. Their excellent military acumen allows them to assess situations accurately, and the strength demonstrated by the Principality of Dawn during the Clone Wars was something the Chiss would never want to challenge. The Naruto family spoke up. That's exactly what I mean. If the Dawn planet is truly capable of building a Stargate, then our Chiss territory will never be able to prevent them from entering chaos. And it might actually be fortunate that the Dawn Principality found us first. What if they had found someone else? Grisk? Kilji? Can any of you guarantee that they wouldn't help the Dawn Principality build the Stargate? You mean since we can't stop it, why not seek the best possible outcome for ourselves based on this reality? The Sipla family asked slowly. This is a loss of power and an insult to our nation, the Chafu family retorted angrily. If you ask me, we should just eliminate them. Hyperspace communication in chaos is severely restricted, and it would be impossible for the Dawn Principality to know what is happening here. What I'm considering is that we might use the power of the Dawn Principality to attack more of our enemies. I mean, not just Mongol, the Naruto family suggested. This will only lead to playing with fire and getting burned, the Elise family cautioned. We can establish relations with the Principality of Dawn and even assist them in building Stargates, but everything must remain within a controllable range. We should not become too close to the Principality of Dawn. Then you propose turning the Dawn Principality into a neighbor that has a Stargate but doesn't have a very good relationship with us? The Naruto family mocked. Silence fell over the room once more. Let's conclude the discussion for today. Everyone, go back and think about it carefully. Tomorrow, we will vote on the matter of the Dawn Principality, the Sipla family announced, clapping their hands. Everyone stood up, bowed, and then turned to walk out of the door behind their respective seats. A sneer played on the lips of the Eliz family member. She lowered her head and looked at a document. It was a report sent by Admiral Chiara detailing the behavior of the delegation members from the Principality of Dawn during their journey, including various details. Very interesting, the Eliz family member murmured to the attendants behind her. Send a few beauties to the delegation of the Principality of Dawn, and then select a beautiful agent from the intelligence department. Have her blend in and get close to that man, Keith Maxwell. End of chapter. Chapter 1967. Alliance. The Sipla family oversees resources, finance, personnel management, and colonies in Chisland. It is the largest family and holds the most stable position, explained Lieutenant General Brent. The Naruto family handles military and diplomatic affairs. They are the most powerful, but because they are controlled by the Sipla family, they have always been ranked second, he continued. The Rokini family is responsible for scientific research, education, and communications, Brent added. The Saberson family manages law, security, education, and medicine, he concluded. These are the 4 major families in Chisland. Additionally, there are 5 other families. Together, the 9 major families form the highest authority in Chisland, the cabinet. These 9 families are also known as the ruling families. However, it should be noted that the ruling families of Chisland are not static, and the number of cabinet members often changes, Brent elaborated. For instance, among the 5 major families at the next level, the Chafe family has risen very quickly in recent years. They are now considered to be second only to the 4 major families in strength, and may even challenge the Inrokini and Saberson families. Therefore, in many cases, to gain greater political status, the Chafe family will put forward some radical and distinctive proposals, Brent explained. You mean they want to kill us quietly? Haha. How did they come up with this method? Do they really think we are fools? Keith Maxwell interjected with a smirk. You have to understand that they made this proposal out of political ambition rather than reason. You will find that the older and more powerful the families, the more cautious their proposals are. Only those emerging families who want to challenge the old order will not hesitate to carry out a series of political adventures, because only in this way can they have the possibility of breaking the order, Brent clarified. So what? Keith asked, raising an eyebrow. Ha. So, secretly trapping us and hoping that the Duke of Dawn doesn't find out? Is this the lowest cost and highest return plan? If this plan is really implemented and effective, then the family who proposed it will naturally achieve the greatest political gains, Brent explained. Have they never considered the possibility of failure? Keith questioned. As politicians, they do not consider the possibility of failure, because once they fail, the entire Chisland will pay the price and they will have more ways to divert conflicts. Do you know why? Because at that time, the main conflict will be between Chisland and the Principality of Dawn. How much does it have to do with their Chafe family? Brent responded. That being said, we need to stay away from the Chafe family, Keith concluded. Don't you think that the Chafe family is the most suitable target for us to get close to and win over? Brent suggested. I understand. So starting from today's dinner, I have to stay away from you. I found that you people who play politics are really too dark. Keith remarked with a sigh. I only have a superficial understanding of politics. To really play politics, you have to go to the Grand Duke or Prime Minister Francis. So if you treat me to dinner as promised, don't think you can escape, Brent said with a chuckle. Keith Maxwell put away all the information in front of him. Okay, you explained the current political situation in Chisland to me, but I only understand half of it. So today's dinner is only half of it. Your understanding is your problem, not mine, Lieutenant General Brent, who was sitting opposite him, said with a smile. A full dinner, as we agreed. If you only looked at the surface, you wouldn't know that this was a conversation between a lieutenant general and a captain. It looked more like two old friends. Actually, compared to others, I really didn't expect that the corruption and infighting in Chisland would reach such an extent, Keith Maxwell said, leaning back on the soft sofa. It's not even a planetary standard day yet, and they are already sending this information to your door. Lieutenant General Brent smiled and said, This is an inevitable result. First, the power of the Dawn Principality is too strong compared to the Chis. And secondly, Chapter 1968, Alliance. The internal divisions within Chisland make it easier for us to exploit their weaknesses, Brent continued, finishing his thought from the previous chapter. Keith nodded thoughtfully. So our best course of action is to navigate these political waters carefully, aligning ourselves with the right families while avoiding unnecessary conflicts. Exactly, Brent agreed. We need to be strategic in our alliances. The Chafe family, despite their radical proposals, could be a valuable ally if we play our cards right. Keith sighed. Politics is such a dirty game. Brent chuckled. Welcome to the world of power and influence, my friend. Now, let's focus on our next steps. We need to solidify our position and ensure that we are prepared for any eventuality. Keith nodded. Agreed. Let's get to work. With that, the two men began to strategize, their minds focused on the complex web of alliances and rivalries that define the political landscape of Chisland. The Chis do not have a strong presence in this star field. Their natural enemies are weaker than them, so the main conflicts have shifted to domestic issues. Under their family oligarchy, the family is absolute and interests have become relative. Keith Maxwell curled his lips and said, So you said another long sentence that I couldn't understand. Brent explained, The result is that interests are ignored for the sake of the family. As the ruling family, the interests they can involve are often national interests. In other words, family interests are greater than national interests. The Chis are really like this? It's a miracle they can exist to this day, Keith Maxwell remarked. So the premise of their existence is that they have no natural enemies, Brent said with a smile. Do you remember the story about the Chis that the Grand Duke told us? They lost too many people during a war, resulting in an insufficient labor force in their territory. To quickly replenish their labor force and surpass other families, they recruited the Killik swarm as laborers. As a result, all three families were assimilated by the Killik swarm, almost plunging the Chiss territory into a crisis of destruction. Keith Maxwell waved his hand and said, "Hey, I asked a lot of people, but they don't know about this." "Whether it's true or not, looking at the Chiss now, do you think this will definitely not happen?" Brent asked. Before Keith Maxwell could answer, the doorbell rang. Keith stood up with a loud laugh, put on a pair of heart-shaped sunglasses, pointed at Lieutenant General Brent with a flamboyant gesture, and said, "Aha! My informants are here. General, I have to go investigate for information. Let's talk tomorrow." As he spoke, he opened the door to reveal 7 or 8 beautiful women of various kinds squeezing in. Except for their blue skin, the Chiss are just like humans in other ways. Even by human standards, these women were exceptionally beautiful. One of them was even a human, not a blue-skinned Chiss. The Chiss territory is not entirely composed of Chiss. There are still a small number of other races living in the unknown starfield, most of them humans. Keith Maxwell laughed and threw himself among the beauties who surrounded him. "General, if I could beat him, I would definitely do it," said a negotiator and consultant of the delegation. "If you really want it, I can help you contact the Inrokini family. They are in charge of education." "It shouldn't be a big problem to send you a few schoolgirls," Lieutenant General Brent said slowly. "Haha, forget it. I don't have the ability to stay rational in front of these beauties with ulterior motives," the negotiator refused with a smile. "Ha ha ha. In short, relax a little. We have the power of the Dawn Principalate, as our backing, and we have the advantages brought by the Stargate. The Chiss territory has only one choice, to submit," Lieutenant General Brent said with a smile. "What we need to do next is get ready. According to the instructions given to us by Master Tang Xiao, we must focus on the Naruto family. It's the person whose core name is Thrawn. I've seen some information about him. It seems that he cheated in the simulation exam at Chiss Military Academy," the negotiator said, flipping through the information. "Miss Ro Naruto. This is his full name. He may be our most powerful enemy and most reliable ally. I still can't understand what Lord Tang Xiao means," Brent said. Facing the extremely powerful Principality of Dawn, which also possesses Stargate technology, the Chiss territory surrendered so quickly, which was completely beyond expectations. Of the Stargate is far beyond their current understanding and capabilities. Vice Admiral Brent, commander of the 2nd Exploration Fleet and diplomatic ambassador, found himself in a unique position. Although it wasn't a formal surrender, the Chiss territory, embroiled in internal conflicts, quickly displayed its vulnerabilities when the Dawn Principality's fleet forcefully entered their space and revealed the existence of the Stargate. Within a day of settling into their luxurious state-level residence, Brent and his team received nearly 20 beauties, bribes worth hundreds of millions, and various gifts from different families. The intelligence and blackmail material they gathered were staggering. For instance, the Eli's family, mortal enemies of the Naruto family, eagerly divulged all they knew about their rivals. In turn, the Miss family, who had grievances with the Elez family, provided their own set of secrets. The Saberson family sent generous gifts and subtly suggested that the Miurani family would be a good choice for the Stargate construction. However, another source indicated that the Chaff family should handle the construction. The Naruto family, responsible for the military, quietly proposed that if the Dawn Principality helped them expand their territory and defeat nearby civilizations, they would assist in securing more benefits in the unknown starfield. The Inrokini family offered to build the Stargate within 3 months if the Saberson family was eliminated, citing their notorious corruption and tendency to cut corners. The Chafu family accused the Rokini family of engaging in illegal activities and suggested their destruction, while the Sepula family, controlling the territory's resources, sent gifts without making any demands, knowing their support would be crucial for the Stargate's construction. In short, the 9 major families were undermining each other with their own agendas. Lieutenant General Brent now held incriminating information on all of them. If this had been a true invasion, Shizland would have been easily compromised. However, in the event of a military invasion, these families would likely unite against a common enemy. The current situation, where each family pursued its own interests, was precisely what the Kingdom of Dawn desired. 2 days later, Chisland decided to accept the Principality of Dawn's proposal and form an alliance. They also permitted the construction of a forward base and stargate on the planet Missos, the initial landing site of the Second Exploration Fleet. This planet had been devastated by a nuclear bombing to eliminate the Mongar infection, leaving it desolate. The Second Exploration Fleet immediately began constructing the Stargate, with Chisland offering engineering teams and raw materials. Their eagerness stemmed from a desire to uncover the Stargate's secrets during its construction. However, such ambitions were destined to fail, as the technology of the Stargate was far beyond their current understanding and capabilities. The Vasari people's technology is completely different from that of the Chiss, and indeed, from any other civilization in the galaxy. Even if the Chiss were given the blueprints, they wouldn't be able to understand them at all. In a significant development, the Chiss agreed to establish a joint combat command dedicated to combating the Mongar threat. Admiral Chiara of the Chiss Defense Fleet was appointed as the commander-in-chief of this headquarters. The two deputy commanders are Lieutenant General Hiru and Lieutenant General Brent, who command the First and Second Exploration Fleets of the Dawn Principality, respectively. After sharing information about the Mongar, the Chiss marked numerous planetary coordinates where the Mongar had been detected. Some of these coordinates were within Chiss territory, while others were in the jurisdiction of other civilizations. This situation presents an intriguing dilemma. If the Mongar appear in the territory of other civilizations, how will the Joint Command handle the conflict? Will they engage in combat over it, or will they seek diplomatic solutions? Simultaneously, the Chiss officially established diplomatic relations with the Principality of Dawn, signing a series of economic cooperation agreements. The Principality of Dawn received assistance from the Chiss in building a Stargate through a loan arrangement, and in return provided some technological blueprints to the Chiss as part of the compensation. Many of the technologies chosen by the Chiss are related to warship manufacturing. The warship technology provided by the Principality of Dawn is primarily derived from the shipbuilding technology of the Kaldari Republic in Eviv. Additionally, due to their backwardness in robot technology and their need for labor, the Chiss opted for synthetic human technology instead of engineering or combat robots. Specifically, they chose the second-generation synths from Fallout 4. It appears that the Chiss do not want cold, emotionless robots to make their society feel cold. The second-generation synths from Fallout 4, which have achieved a high level of simulation, seem to be a suitable choice. Under the powerful influence of the Dawn Principality and the direct deterrence of the Stargate, the Chiss territory quickly accepted the presence of the Dawn Principality. Thus, the alliance between the two parties officially began. End of chapter. Chapter 1968, Chisling's Choice. Helmut Zemo, the chief minister of the cabinet, walked into Tang Xiao's office, handed over a document with great respect, and said, "Your Majesty, the Second Exploration Fleet, Brent, has already received a reply." "Ah, it seems they have already dealt with the Chiss," Tang Xiao remarked with a mocking smile. "If my guess is correct, the Chiss have already started to fall apart." "That's true. We managed to defeat the Chiss faster than we anticipated," Helmut Zemo replied, his smile equally mocking. "Those Chiss who pride themselves on being extraordinary couldn't wait to take down their own," Brent confessed, and then all kinds of infighting methods between them emerged one after another. It was simply ugly. It's to be expected. The Chiss are an oligarchy with family as the core, and without natural enemies, they naturally focus on internal fighting, Tang Xiao said, leaning back in his chair. Severance Tan and Misro Naruto, these two are top-notch super geniuses even within the scope of the Milky Way. Such people will be destroyed because of the struggles between their major families. Expelled, you can imagine what it's like inside Chiss territory. He glanced at the portable terminal in his hand, showing no interest in checking the recorded content in detail. He tossed it onto the table and said, "You can report directly on the agreements we have signed with Chisling." Helmut Zemo walked to Tang Xiao's side, bowed slightly, and began. "The first is the construction of the Stargate. We provide Chisling with goods worth 2.5 billion number 4 currency, of which the technical blueprint is priced at 1.27 billion, and the remaining 1.23 billion are rare metals. Chisling provides us with a construction team of 5,000 people and supporting engineering spacecraft. They provide all non-core materials for the construction of the Stargate. The estimated completion time of the project is 7 standard months." "So slow?" Tang Xiao frowned. "We only spent 2 standard months on the Stargate on Levick planet, right? That's because Lieutenant General Heiru occupied the industrial core of the Xilu Empire, which was equivalent to the entire Xilu Empire's construction efforts. At the same time, the Piake people also sent more than 200,000 workers to assist in the advancement of the project," Zemo explained. "In comparison, although the CHIS construction engineering team is much more advanced, it is still too small in scale. The reason they gave is that they themselves are also facing a serious labor shortage problem." Tang Xiao smiled coldly. "The CHIS still have reservations. They are still afraid that we will usurp their position. That's fine. They just need to feel at ease and become our agents in the unknown star field. Don't worry about anything else. After the Stargate is repaired, we can deal with them, if necessary." Zemo smiled and nodded. "I'll start making arrangements immediately. In addition, the technical blueprints chosen by the CHIS mainly include ecological simulation farms, second-generation synthetic humans, and bionic chips. Among the Kaldari Republic's warships we provided, they chose the Kitty Hawk-class frigate, Merlin class, the Heron-class electronic warfare frigate, Heron class, and the Petrel-class destroyer, Cormorant class." Tang Xiao said, "Their choice is very smart. These technologies are not particularly sophisticated, but they can just make up for their current shortcomings." Zemo smiled and said, "Indeed, the CHIS are still very professional in all aspects." Lieutenant General Brent also mentioned in his report that their representatives were entangled in the Phoenix-class battleship we deliberately put on display for a long time, their eyes almost falling out. In the end, they still chose those types of small battleships with tears in their eyes. The Phoenix class, with a long axis of 326 meters, belongs to the battleship class according to the classification of the Fourth Civilization, not the Dreadnought class in other classifications. EV-T. Tang Xiao's voice turned cold. "If my judgment is correct, the value of these technologies far exceeds 1.27 billion number 4 currency." Zemo quickly responded. Lieutenant General Brent also mentioned that the technical blueprint of the Petrel-class destroyer was privately provided to the Sipla family as a political donation. This generous gift has endeared the Sipla family to us. Of course, this gift is semi-public, though somewhat concealed. Every other family is aware of it. Tang Xiao's cold expression softened. Smart choice. He did not choose the Chav family, who are trying to rise, but the Sipla family, who have a stable position. It seems that appointing Brent as the commander and representative of the envoy was a wise decision. The Chav family can only be used as a tool, but they are not suitable to be loyal allies. Similarly, the Sipla family is not suitable to be loyal allies either. They can only serve as a temporary measure. Zemo displayed a sly and gloomy smile. The real choice for a loyal ally is currently determined to be the Saberson family. This will need to be approached slowly and with long-term planning. Lieutenant General Brent has already begun making arrangements based on your grand strategy. Although Tang Xiao hadn't read much information about the CHIS territory, he was very aware of the dynamics among the major families of the CHIS. In his opinion, this was due to Tang Xiao's ability to see through everything. Since he woke up from the Mothership 20 years ago, Tang Xiao had demonstrated his power to foresee the future countless times. Zemo continued. In addition to technical exchanges, Chisling has also signed a series of trade and economic cooperation agreements with us. These agreements will take effect after the Stargate is completed. Their main demand is for agricultural products and electronic automation products. On one hand, the Chiss robotic technology is not developed. On the other hand, due to the instability of the hyperspace lanes, large-scale exploration and expansion cannot be carried out. The Chiss territory suitable for agriculture is very precious and rare, so their demand for agricultural technology is also very high. None of this matters. Just let Brent handle it. Tang Xiao waved his hand dismissively. Then, the Joint Operations Command was established. The commander-in-chief of this command is Admiral Chiara of the Chiss, a member of the Yalizi family. Therefore, we have deliberately distanced ourselves from the Yalizi family, according to the plan, Zemo said. After the construction of the Stargate is completed, we will investigate and purify the Mongar-infested planets provided by the Chiss one by one. We believe that we can get closer to the core of Mongar step by step. The Naruto family, which is in charge of the military, is very interested in this planet. Tang Xiao said slowly. The military strategy of the Chiss focuses on defense. They stipulate that their fleet must not be the first to attack, and they have formulated a series of laws for this purpose. This is why the basic strategy of the generals from the Chiss Military Academy is to strike later, including Severance Tan. But there is only one exception to this defensive strategy, Mongar. Zemo nodded. Indeed, only when facing Mongar can the Chiss fleet adopt an offensive posture. As the family in charge of the military, the Naruto family has built all their achievements and strength on offense. However, that series of defensive doctrines has become a chain around their necks. They are eager to use the chisel of Mongar to break this chain, and the Joint Operations Headquarters we have established is the hammer that strikes the chisel. Satisfy them, Tang Xiao said, closing his eyes and waving his hand to indicate that the discussion was over. He signaled Zemo to leave. Zemo bowed and walked backward out of the room. Throughout the entire reporting process, he did not open any documents but kept all the information in his mind. His mind was like a treasure trove. In his report, he didn't just stick to the script but added a lot of his own understanding. This made Tang Xiao very comfortable. Perhaps in the eyes of many, Helmut Zemo was a sycophant, but to Tang Xiao, he was someone who made him feel at ease and convenient. In this seemingly peaceful process, the future of Chisi territory gradually began to be bound by the Principality of Dawn. For the Dawn Principality, this was an expansion and an invasion, but for the Chisi territory, they had no choice. The existence of the Stargate was not just a convenient travel tool, it was a technology that could change the future of countless races and civilizations. The Galactic Republic, without Stargate technology, could only sigh helplessly as it looked at the unknown star field. Even if they could organize a large-scale exploration operation, it would be of no avail. They had no ability to bring anything back from there, nor could they maintain their power in that region. However, the Principality of Dawn, which owned the Stargate, could gradually bring the unknown star field into its sphere of influence step by step. This was the power of the Stargate. The races and civilizations in the unknown star field, even the most powerful Chiss, had their sphere of influence limited by hyperspace turbulence. The range they could radiate could not compare to the outside world that could freely use hyperspace channels. As long as the traffic problem could be solved, outside forces could easily make several rounds here. From the moment the Stargate began to be built, the unknown star territory was already destined to be in the possession of the Principality of Dawn. Within the territory of the Principality of Dawn, on the edge of the Sethwena sector, lay the planet Terminus. A Hutt was arranging his clothes with the help of more than a dozen female slaves. The gorgeous and expensive clothes covered his pale and smooth skin, giving him a softness that was different from other Hutts and a morbid appearance. Yes, as a race born from the swamp, the Hutt's skin was typically rough, wrinkled, and mainly dark green, brown, and other colors similar to the swamp. However, this Hutt, although still pot-bellied, bloated, and clumsy like the others, had white and wrinkle-free skin. By Hutt standards, this look was disgusting. However, despite his appearance, even among the powerful Hutts, there were almost no people who dared to laugh at him. This white Hutt was the leader of the Gorenzla family, the third most powerful family among the countless Hutt families. Among the Hutts, The undisputed largest and second largest families were the Desaligic family and the Basadi family. Although the Gorensla family had a very long history, it was only in recent years that they had truly become a force that could influence the situation in Hutt space. The struggle between the largest Hutt family, the Desaligic family, and the second largest family, the Basadi family, had been going on for nearly 20 years. Of course, the Hutts were a race that relied on smuggling and crime, and most of the struggles between these criminal families were at the business level. In addition to the large-scale armed conflict that broke out on the planet Tatooine between Jabba the Hutt of the Desaligic family and Gadula the Hutt of the Basadi family, in the past 20 years, although conflicts between the Desaligic family and the Basadi family continued, they did not escalate to the level of war. Most of their struggles involved fighting for territory, destroying businesses, and plundering smuggling channels. Although equally cruel and bloody, the scale was still limited. However, starting from the large-scale conflict on Tatooine, the fuse of the family conflict that was ignited finally burned the core interests of the two families. The two families originally had very sharp conflicts, and they became even more irreconcilable after the conflict between Jabba and Gadula. With the outbreak of the Clone Wars, both the Galactic Republic and the Confederation of Independent Sith MS sought the support of the Hutts to allow their fleets to navigate Hutt space. To achieve this, they extended their influence deep into Hutt territory, each looking for a suitable ally. Initially, Kiliak, the leader of the Desaligic family, and Aruba, the leader of the Basadi family, effectively limited the penetration of these external forces. Even the Scourge Legion, an early implant of the Fourth Civilization within Hutt space, was kept at bay. However, internal strife soon emerged. Within the Desaligic family, Jabba's uncle, Zero the Hutt, gained the support of Zorba, the supreme leader of the Desaligic family and father of Jabba and others. After Zorba's assassination, Zero took over as the leader, plunging the Desaligic family into division. Zero's erratic behavior led him to use the family's resources to launch a frenzied attack on the Basadi family. On the other side, the Basadi family, which had grown increasingly powerful under Aruk's leadership, faced internal challenges as well. Gadula the Hutt, a significant figure within the Basadi family, wielded considerable influence. In response to Zero's relentless assault, Gadula reacted with extreme and violent measures. The conflict between the Desaligic and Basadi families began to spiral out of control under the influence of these two volatile leaders. Amidst this chaos, Aruba, the leader of the Gorensla family, seized the opportunity to rise. Using the planet Terminus as his base, he began to expand his power aggressively. End of chapter. Chapter 1969, Civil War in Hutt Space. Part 1. I have almost forgotten about the Hutts. I will spend 2 chapters here to outline the Hutt Civil War and briefly explain the affairs of the Hutts during the Clone Wars. This will illustrate how Tang Xiao's influence led to the outbreak of the Hutt Civil War. Under the leadership of Aruba, the Gorensla family secretly aligned themselves with Tang Xiao. In reality, the Hutts, now divided, had long been infiltrated by external forces. During the era of the Galactic Republic, Palpatine was secretly courting Jabba. When Jabba suffered significant losses on Tatooine and nearly lost his position within the Desaligic family, the Hutt underworld boss finally bowed to Palpatine. At this time, the 5-member Supreme Council of the Hutts consisted of Kiriak and Jabba from the Desaligic family, Alak from the Basadia family, Marlo from the Kunalak family, and Aruba from the Gorensla family. However, the internal struggle within the Desaligic family was also very complicated. When Tang Xiao used the opportunity to destroy the Black Sun, he allied with Zero the Hutt, one of the 9 Vigos of the Black Sun, and also Jabba's uncle. Note, although the Hutts are not strictly hermaphrodites, they can change their gender according to different situations. This race is quite unique in every sense. That's why you might see me refer to Zero as Jabba's uncle, but don't be surprised if I also refer to her as her. This is not a typo. At that time, Zero, who had been expelled from the family and was living a difficult life, sought out her and Jabba's father, Zorba, who was imprisoned, with Tang Xiao's secret support. Zorba and Zero then returned to the Desaligic family to launch a counterattack, causing a split within the family. Consequently, Kiriak, the current leader of the Desiligic family, had to form an alliance with Jabba to fight against Zorba and Zero. To resist the pressure from Zero and the Basadi family, they had to get closer to Palpatine. As a result, the strength of the Desiligic family, bolstered by external support, continued to grow. This was reflected in the 5-member Supreme Council of the Hutts, which now included Kiriak, Jabba, and Zero from the Desiligic family, Alok from the Basadi family, and Marlo from the Kunalak family. The Gornsla family faded from the highest authority. Similarly, after the death of the former leader of the Basadi family, Alok Basadi, Arak Basadi became the leader. This ruthless man, who could be considered a generational hero, had long seen through the conspiracy of external forces to infiltrate the Hutt forces. He had been trying to maintain the independence of the Basadi family. In the past, Arak was sometimes written as Aruba. Although the names of the Hutts are simple, they are also easy to confuse. Arak suppressed the Hutt Gardula and squeezed out the Scourge Legion that Tang Xiao had installed on Gardula's side. He turned the Scourge Legion from a large corps supported by the Basadi family into ordinary mercenaries, forcing Tang Xiao to abandon the line of Gardula. However, despite the division within the Desiligic family, its strength continued to grow. Arak could only form an alliance with Marlo, the leader of the Kunalak family. The Hutt Council at this time consisted of Kiriak, Jabba, and Zero from the Desiligic family, Aluk from the Basadi family, and Marlo from the Kunalak family. But even such an alliance could not stop the Desiligic family's expansion. For a long time, the alliance between the Basadi family and the Kunalak family was losing ground. Another reason for their struggles was that Gadula Basadi, who had been abandoned by Tang Xiao but was still unwilling to become a mere decoration, kept causing trouble behind their backs. Finally, when the Clone Wars broke out, Aluk realized that things could not continue like this. So, he also sought out Count Dooku, hoping to gain the support of the Confederation of Independent Systems. Count Dooku was more than willing to oblige. He and Arak quickly formed a secret alliance. With the newfound strength of the Basadi family, they were finally able to launch a counterattack. Meanwhile, due to Zorba's assassination, Zero lost his backing and consequently his eligibility to join the Hutt Council. At this time, the Hutt Council consisted of Kiliak and Jabba of the Desiligic family, Uruk of the Basadi family, his son Durga Basadi, and Kun Marlo of House Narak. During the Clone Wars, the maneuverability of the fleets on both sides increased significantly. This was primarily because both the Galactic Republic and the Confederation of Independent Systems had supporters within Hutt space, allowing their fleets to move freely through this special region. Unlike the original plot, where the Confederation of Independent Systems was defeated in 3 years, in this timeline, it managed to sustain itself for 7 years, largely due to the support from Hutt space. In the original plot, Hutt space turned against the Galactic Republic, prompting the Republic to establish the 13th Army to block the Confederation's retreat. This was a crucial factor in the later stages of the war, leading to the Confederation being divided into 3 isolated areas. In summary, the conflict was essentially a power struggle between the Desiligic family, supported by the Galactic Republic, and the Basadi family, backed by the Confederation of Independent Systems. Beneath these 2 major families, there were individuals secretly supported by the Fourth Civilization and Tang Xiao who continued to stir up trouble. Amidst this turmoil, the Gorensla family, one of the prominent Hutt families, remained conspicuously inactive. This wasn't due to any internal issues within the Gorensla family, but rather because they were subconsciously excluded by the other major families. At that time, the Gorensla family was likely not as powerful as the Kunalak family. When the Kunalak family, under the leadership of Malo Kunalak, aligned themselves with the Basadi family, the Gorensla family lost their seat on the Hutt Council. Another reason for their exclusion was their leader, Oruba. Oruba had albinism, which gave him pale white skin and a greasy, unwrinkled appearance. To hide this, Oruba often wore elaborate clothing and a hat when going out. However, in Hutt culture, wearing clothes is not associated with shame. As a race accustomed to living in swamps, not wearing clothes is their norm. Consequently, Oruba was seen as a repulsive outlier among the Hutts. Chapter 1970, The Hutt Civil War, Part 2. In recent years, during the Hutt battles, the Gorensla family has maintained a low profile. While other families were striving to increase their power and form alliances, the Gorensla family remained silent. Consequently, the Oruba and Gorensla families were seen as outsiders, ostracized and forgotten by the other Hutts. The situation changed when the Fourth Civilization launched the Battle of Terminus and occupied the planet. After the battle, the Gorensla family quietly took control of the transportation thoroughfare in the Outer Ring Star region on Terminus and began to vigorously develop their smuggling industry. No one knows the exact details of how they managed this, but their strength grew rapidly due to the planet's convenient transportation routes, lawlessness, and mixed population. The Gorensla family also formed a strong alliance with Tang Xiao's gang, often collaborating to fend off foreign enemies. Additionally, they maintained good relations with the Bloody Dawn gang, based in the Corellian system. Their sources of goods increased significantly, allowing them to acquire top-notch spices such as aura and diesel bark, which had become scarce elsewhere in the galaxy after the Fourth Civilization's occupation of the Keshel satellite and Harbin. Moreover, the Gorensla family established extensive cooperation with arms smuggling tycoon Yuri Orlov, nicknamed Santa Claus, dealing in various weapons, equipment, and even decommissioned warships. Their criminal and smuggling network expanded significantly, and they even ventured into the Oudmantel planet in the northern galaxy, further increasing their strength. This rapid growth eventually caught the attention of other Hutt families. In an environment where major families were constantly at odds, those envious of the Gorensla family's wealth chose to plunder and fight. However, they were met with brutal resistance. The Gorensla smuggling fleet boasted a large number of powerful warships, including Rifter-class and Slasher-class frigates. These warships, more akin to super-heavy fighter jets, were incredibly fast and heavily armed. The Rifter-class was 50 meters long, and the Slasher-class was 46 meters long, both known for their ferocity. Under their concentrated attacks, even cruiser-level warships couldn't withstand the firepower and were torn apart by these agile and deadly ships. The Gorensla family hired extremely vicious pilots, ensuring that any targeted enemies had no chance of survival. Even escape hatches were systematically destroyed, leaving no survivors. The raiders suffered heavy casualties, and the other families were shocked to realize the true extent of the Gorensla family's power. The current Gorensla smuggling fleet, centered around Thrasher-class heavy destroyers and Rupture-class destroyers, with Rifter and Slasher classes as support, became a formidable force that no one dared to provoke. As a result, the Hutt's 5-person parliamentary seats underwent another change. At the end of the Clone Wars, the council included Jignak and Jabba of House Dasiligic, Aruk and Durga of House Bisadi, and Oruba of House Gorensla. After more than 10 years, Oruba finally managed to oust Marlow of the Kunalak family and return to the parliament. At this time, something earth-shattering was about to unfold. The Galactic Republic had collapsed and was reorganized into the Galactic Empire. Emperor Palpatine of the Galactic Empire maintained a similar policy towards the Hutts, continuing to strongly support the Dasiligic family, led by Jabba and Kiliak. Meanwhile, the Dawn Principality's withdrawal from the war left the Confederation of Independent Systems struggling to maintain its power, which in turn weakened the Bisadi family, subjecting them to constant oppression. During this tumultuous period, Count Dooku and Aluk were forced to join forces to survive, supporting each other on the defensive line of the planet Salukami. The situation was further complicated by Zero of the Dasiligic family and Gadula of the Bisadi family, who were constantly stirring up trouble behind the scenes, escalating conflicts and confrontations between the two factions. The Galactic Empire was eager to capture Salukami, defeat the Confederacy of Independent Systems, and end the war. Palpatine exerted immense pressure on Kiliak, demanding that he block the Hutt space shipping lanes leading to Salukami as quickly as possible. In response, Count Dooku and Aluk fought desperately to defend this last stronghold of the Confederacy. As a result, the struggle between the Dasiligic and Bisadi families grew more direct and larger in scale, with heavy cruiser-level battleships joining the fray. The battle on Salukami was fierce and evenly matched, dragging on for 4 years. During this time, the Galactic Empire clashed with the Confederation of Independent Systems, while the Desaligic family battled the Basadi family. The conflict around Salukami was brutal and terrifying. After 4 years of relentless fighting, Salukami was finally captured and the last bastion of the Confederacy of Independent Systems was destroyed. The struggle between the Desaligic and Basadi families also came to an end. With the fall of Salukami, the Confederacy could no longer resist the advance of the Imperial fleet, nor could they support the Basadi family. Aluk Basadi was forced to take a stand, but ultimately failed. At this point, Emperor Palpatine's reckoning arrived. The Desaligic family had received substantial support from the Galactic Empire, aligning their interests closely with the Empire. After defeating the Confederacy, Palpatine ordered the Desaligic family to reunify Hutt space, a directive that was self-explanatory in its implications. The day after Count Dooku's death due to General Grievous's mutiny, Palpatine commanded Jabba and Kiliak to dissolve the Hutt Supreme Council. While Jabba was displeased with this order, Kiliak had already resigned himself to the situation. He proceeded to forcibly disband the Hutt Council, expelling all members except those from the Desaligic family. End of chapter. Chapter 1971, A Chaotic Future. Kiliak Tsiljik's dissolution of the Hutt Supreme Council can only mean one thing. He intends to merge Hutt space into the Galactic Empire, making it a sector of the Empire. Emperor Palpatine clearly shares this vision and will undoubtedly support it. Kiliak is simply following the Emperor's will, hoping to gain as much power as he desires in the process. In the original plot, the Galactic Empire also attempted this, but Hutt space remained a semi-independent area. The Galactic Empire did occupy it and sent local officials and sector governors, but these individuals were quickly bribed by the Hutts, leaving the situation unchanged. However, the current situation is different. Tang Xiao has long incited a struggle between Jabba of the Desaligic family and Gadula of the Basadi family, intensifying the conflict between the two families. This ongoing strife has prevented the Hutts from addressing the issue as they did in the original plot. Kiliak has already lost his mind in this nearly 20-year struggle. As the patriarch of the Desaligic family, the largest Hutt family, he has endured too much. He faced assassination attempts and ostracism, and his father Zorba was rescued by Zero through unknown means, temporarily losing his status as clan leader. Zorba then suddenly died, leaving a will that handed the position of patriarch to Zero, leading to another bloody struggle within the Desaligic family. By now, Kiliak no longer trusts anyone, not even Jabba, who has always supported him. He only believes in the power he holds. To him, the Hutt Council is a stumbling block in his path. Palpatine had secretly promised him that if Hutt space could be unified, the Galactic Empire would ensure he became the supreme emperor of the Hutts. This promise ignited Kiliak's ambition to rebuild the Hutt Empire and ascend the throne as emperor. Jabba Dazilgic vehemently opposed this approach, arguing that it trampled on the Hutt space's traditions spanning tens of thousands of years. The two had a major falling out. Kiliak then began to target the Basadi family, which had once allied with Count Dooku and was now seen as the Galactic Empire's biggest enemy. Consequently, the enemies of the Galactic Empire became Kiliak's enemies as well. Unexpectedly, Zero Dazilgic sided with Kiliak. Zero promised Kiliak that if he could lead the Desaligic family to unify Hutt space, she would relinquish the position of patriarch, as stated in Zorba's will. Kiliak abandoned Jabba and formed an alliance with Zero. The forces of the Desaligic family, led by Zero, were originally various extremists. Now, they attacked the Basadi family with even more fervor, as if they had received an imperial edict. Their methods became more extreme. They directly targeted members of the Basadi family, breaking a long-standing taboo. Previously, Hutt struggles were business-related. Defeating a family meant swallowing up their business, but killing Hutts was forbidden. Kiliak and Zero shattered this taboo, killing 12 Hutts from the Basadi family in just 1 month. This ignited Aluk Basadi's fury. Before Aluk could react, a sudden catastrophe struck. A spaceship lost control over Nar Shaddaa and crashed into a tall tower on the planet's surface. The reactor on the spacecraft exploded, causing the tower to collapse within minutes. Aluk's son, Durga Basadi, was in the tower at the time. No one knows what will happen next. Whether Durga was truly so unlucky, or if an insider leaked his whereabouts, remains uncertain. Regardless, Aruk Basadi directly blamed the Desiligic family for the incident. The following day, Aruk Basadi broke Hutt tradition and deployed the family's fleet, not just escort ships, but the full might of the Hutt Empire's last remaining glory. This formidable fleet is one of the reasons the Galactic Republic and the Galactic Empire fear the Hutts. The Basadi family's fleet bombarded a city heavily populated with Desiligic family properties, resulting in significant casualties. This action played into the hands of Kiliak and Zai Ro, who also summoned their family fleet. The conflict between the Desiligic and Basadi families had officially escalated into a full-blown war. During this turmoil, another faction of the Desiligic family, led by Jabba, and the Kunalak family, headed by Marlow, re-established the Hutt Council. The Gornsla family, represented by Oruba, also joined them. The new Hutt Council members included Jabba of the Desiligic family, his nephew Gorga, Marlow of the Kunalak family, Oruba of the Gornsla family, and Vado Angeliak Ataru from the powerful Angeliak family. This new Hutt Council aimed to quell the civil war, restore Hutt traditions, and arrest the war criminals responsible for the conflict, Aruk Basadi, Zero Desiligic, and Kiliak Desiligic. However, mere words would not suffice to stop the civil war. Oruba Gornsla, with ulterior motives, proposed a plan to gather the remaining fleets in Hutt space and reorganize them into the Hutt Parliament fleet to counter the Desiligic and Basadi families. Amidst this multi-party competition, Hutt space descended into the flames of civil war, a conflict destined to continue until one side was utterly defeated. Key players included Kiljak Desiligic, who aspired to the supreme throne of the Hutts, Zero Desiligic, and Gadula Basadi, who had been bribed by Tang Xiao and secretly supported him. The grief-stricken and maddened Aruk Basadi, Oruba Gornsla, who had become the true ally of the Dawn Principality and joined the Masonic Alliance, and Jabba Desiligic, determined to restore the status quo in Hutt space. The future of Hutt space was already in chaos. End of chapter. Chapter 1972, National Day Gift. Chapter 1973, National Day Ceremony. Bang, bang, bang. Over the Dawn planet, countless fireworks bloomed, painting the sky with various beautiful patterns. Even the usually cold and thick star rings were now adorned with countless colored lights, reflecting a kaleidoscope of colors across the planet's sky. Today marks the 8th anniversary of the founding of the Principality of Dawn. Since its establishment in 20 BBY until now in 12 BBY, the Principality of Dawn has remained stable, prosperous, and strong, growing more powerful each day. All this is due to the wise leadership of the great, brave, wise, and powerful Grand Duke of Dawn, Tang Xiao. Under Tang Xiao's leadership, the Dawn Principality defeated the Galactic Republic and established its position. It then made peace with the Galactic Empire, decisively ending the war. Through a series of targeted developments, the national power of the Dawn Principality increased rapidly. The reintegration of Rendili Interstellar Power Company and the relocation of the massive population on the planet Rendili significantly boosted the overall strength of the Principality. According to recent statistics, the industrial production capacity of the Principality of Dawn has officially surpassed that of the former Confederation of Independent Systems, making it one of the most powerful entities since the founding of the Galactic Republic, Galactic Empire. With the completion of the Stargate on the planet Rendili 2 years ago, population relocation became much more convenient. In just 2 years, the relocation of 30 billion people was completed. If not for the Ministry of the Interior's complaints about the strain, and Minister of the Interior Daphne Clement's personal appeals to Tang Xiao, the relocation would have been even faster. During this 10-day National Day celebration, the residents of the Principality of Dawn are at their happiest. They organize various activities to celebrate and praise Tang Xiao's great achievements. These days are also the busiest for Tang Xiao. Over the 10 days, he will visit 10 planets in the Principality, participate in local National Day activities, and give speeches. This year's National Day tour includes the planet Having, the capital of the Haven sector, the planet Eriadu, the capital of the Sethwena sector, the Solarian home planet Keve Bir, the Vasari homeland Karl, the Anaji planet, the capital of the model sector, the Lundali planet, the largest industrial center of the Dawn Principality, the Yagodur planet, the homeland of the Given people, the Vathian planet, the homeland of the Vathian people, the Jinyan planet, the homeland of the Gran people, and the Solist planet, home of the Solist people. However, due to potential abnormal astronomical phenomena on the Yagodur planet, Tang Xiao temporarily canceled his trip there and instead participated remotely in the National Day activities of the Jivan colony on the other side of the galaxy, Lada. According to many editorials and news reports, compared to Tang Xiao's previous tours, last year focused on the northern border, the year before on agricultural production planets, and the year before that on the homes of some subordinate races. This year, Tang Xiao made very conservative choices. His tour focused on the most important planets under the direct jurisdiction of the Principality of Dawn. Experts interpret this as a theme of unity, aiming to strengthen the cohesion among different star regions and races within the Principality, so that everyone can gather their strength to face powerful enemies. The celebrations in various places were lively, seemingly masking many underlying contradictions. Everyone's attention was drawn to the festivities, creating a temporary sense of harmony and unity. Today, Grand Duke Tang Xiao's tour destination is the planet Cave Bur, home to the Solarian people. After more than 20 years of development, the Solarians, with their extremely high reproduction and growth rate, have reached a population of over 8 billion, making them a formidable race. Cave Bur is renowned for its numerous research institutes, intelligence agencies, and advanced shipyards. This Boxing Day, they have prepared a grand gift for Grand Duke Tang Xiao. Tang Xiao was aboard a luxurious shuttle heading to the spaceport on the outskirts of Cave Bur, eagerly awaiting this significant gift. Soon, the sound of ritual music filled the air, and with the impassioned melody, a dazzling white light emerged from the universe. This phenomenon occurs when a large spaceship exits the hyperspace channel, and the intense light indicated the massive size of the incoming ship. Suddenly, a colossal battleship appeared in the empty space, less than 500 kilometers from Tang Xiao's shuttle. Observing the spacecraft through the optical sensor, Tang Xiao, dressed in a magnificent outfit, had an inexplicable smile on his lips. It was the smile of a man who yearned for war and had just acquired a powerful weapon, full of cruelty and a thirst for destruction. As the battleship exited hyperspace, countless Solarian engineers immediately began intense calculations and inspections. This jump was a bold attempt, as the landing point was within the gravity well of the planet Cave Bur, or more precisely, within the gravity wells of the gas giant Endor. Cave Bur, being a satellite of Endor, is surrounded by the immense gravity well of the gas giant. Under normal circumstances, spacecraft approaching the moons of Endor, including Cave Bur, must exit hyperspace outside the gas giant's gravity well and then travel using sublight speed engines. However, this battleship had exited hyperspace directly within the gravity well. This feat was previously only achievable by one type of battleship in the Duchy of Dawn, the Endless-class super aircraft carrier, which utilized Forerunner technology engines. Now this new battleship, clearly not an Endless class, had accomplished the same feat. This indicated that the Navy of the Principality of Dawn had further mastered Forerunner engine technology and begun applying jump technology to other battleships. The gifted battleship used its sublight speed engine to approach Tang Xiao's shuttle. The enormous ship, with its soft lines and gold and white paint, resembled the Hell's Angel-class main battleship of the Dawn Principality, but was several times larger. This was a super-large battleship, measuring 3,820 meters in length and 1,400 meters in height, the Revelation-class battleship. Chapter 1973, Apocalypse-class battleship, Part 1. The battleship classification used by the Fourth Civilization is relatively simple and crude. Compared to the Annex Battleship Academy classification commonly used in the Galactic Empire, it is sometimes not as accurate, but it is very clear. Note in a notebook will be tested later. For the battleships of the Fourth Civilization, the classification is as follows: 30 meters and below, fighter, 80 meters and below, frigate, 300 meters and below, destroyer, 1,000 meters and below, cruiser, 3,000 meters and below, battlecruiser, 8,000 meters and below, battleship, 20,000 meters and below, dreadnought, above 20,000 meters, super dreadnought. On this basis, they are also divided into light, heavy, or other different names according to their size, such as electronic warfare frigates and guided missile frigates. This is based on the characteristics of those different warships. For example, if it is a heavy cruiser, its size is roughly in the second half of the range between 300 and 1,000 meters. Spaceships from other technology trees, no matter what they were called before, are now uniformly classified according to the level of the fourth civilization. At the same time, there are also classifications including transport ships, auxiliary ships, aircraft carriers, motherships, engineering ships, command ships, titans, colossi, and dominators. These are all professional battleships and are not directly included in the battleship classification. For example, the Ragnarov class, if divided according to size, the length of 14,100 meters should be a dreadnought, but in fact, it is called a Titan in the naval establishment of the Fourth Civilization. The Titan battleship is defined in the Fourth Civilization Navy as a battleship that exists as the flagship of a sector-level fleet. It is unique and irreplaceable in the same sector and serves as the core flagship of the fleet in the entire sector. In other words, the cost of this kind of warship is too high and the functionality is very high. Some high-precision equipment and parts cannot be put on the assembly line, so there is no possibility of mass production. Therefore, a sector-level fleet can only have one. Take the Anchoron-class Titan battleship as an example. The construction period is close to 5 years and requires a huge amount of resources and industrial production capacity. Even with the current productivity of the Dawn Principality, it was not until 2 years ago that the second Anchoron-class Titan battleship, Yuanju, was completed and entered into active service. Currently, the Supreme Command has not approved the construction plan for the No. 3 ship, instead investing resources into the Solarian people to build the Archangel-class Titan battleship. Therefore, another example is the 9,440-meter Anchoron-class Titan battleship. If one day the Fourth Civilization can mass-produce this kind of warship, then the Anchoron class will be stripped of its Titan battleship title and classified according to the battleship classification, renamed Anchoron-class Dreadnought. Of course, if the technology reaches the level where the Anchoron class can be mass-produced, there will be no need to produce warships like the Anchoron class with various auxiliary functions packed in. Instead, they will choose more advanced, professional battleships with single functions. So when that day comes, the name of the Anchoron-class Titan battleship will most likely be retained as a commemorative one. By the way, the Principality of Dawn can indeed mass-produce Ragnarov-class Titan battleships, but there is no need for it, so the Navy has not mentioned the idea of renaming the Ragnarov class as a dreadnought. In the Fourth Civilization Military Museum, the Plague, the only Ragnarov-class Titan battleship built by the Fourth Civilization, is still being celebrated and remembered for its great achievements. Tang Xiao took a shuttle and entered the Shenxi-class battleship. The battleship had reached such an extent that it was almost a steel city. Along the way, Arroyo Barlow, the chief engineer of the Solarians and the Dawn Principality, personally explained to Tang Xiao the various functions of the warship. In the design of the Shenxi-class battleship, although deflector shields can be installed, we have chosen not to. The main energy supply of this battleship is concentrated in the 6 flagship laser arrays on both sides. Additionally, to enhance its defensive capabilities, the Apocalypse class is equipped with high-level thermal, electromagnetic, and explosive armor. It also uses adaptive nanotechnology to adjust its defense according to the type of attack, Arroyo Barlow explained. I understand that the resistant armor in the Imar Empire's technology also consumes electricity. Why not just cancel the armor and use a deflector shield? At least this can reduce the development cycle and match our other warships, Tang Xiao inquired. This is a problem in the structural design of the battleship. For example, when the deflector shield is attacked, the energy consumed to neutralize the attack is borne by the reactor of the entire battleship. But if it is resistant armor, then the point that is affected will be the point of attack, Arroyo Barlow said, projecting an elevation profile of the Apocalypse-class battleship on the screen and gesturing on it. So during battle, you can avoid repeated attacks on the same place through your own evasion and maneuvering. This greatly enhances the battleship's protective capabilities. Additionally, the structural design of the Apocalypse class is excellent. Even if one area suffers a devastating blow, it will not affect the performance of other areas, Arroyo Barlow continued with pride. According to our simulations, even if the Apocalypse-class battleship faces 20 Imperial-class Star Destroyers, it is capable of breaking out of the siege and retreating calmly. Well, that's reassuring. According to our intelligence, although the Galactic Empire is also strengthening the research and development and construction of other types of auxiliary ships, the main force of their navy is still the Empire class, which keeps rolling off the production line like dumplings. Tang Xiao nodded. Arroyo Barlow showed a contemptuous smile. The main firepower of the Empire consists of 60 twin heavy turbo-laser cannons and 60 heavy ion cannons. The ion cannons, which are mainly used to attack shields, are ineffective against the Apocalypse-class battleship equipped with electromagnetic armor. Therefore, in front of the Apocalypse class, only half of the firepower of the Empire class can be effective. Based on the main attack methods of the Galactic Empire Navy, we concentrated the installation of armor on thermal energy, electromagnetism, and explosion. I can guarantee that when the Apocalypse class appears in front of them, the Imperial Navy will only cry. He added, of course, using armor as a defensive method is not without its shortcomings. Whether it is a Shenshi-class battleship or a Hell's Angel-class battlecruiser, it can only be used as a simple gunboat. There is no hangar, no carrier-based aircraft, and no Marine Corps. There are only a few minimal point defense turrets. For every additional point defense turret, there is one more weakness in the armor. Chapter 1974, Apocalypse-class battleship, Part 2. Tang Xiao nodded thoughtfully. This is why we need to vigorously develop aircraft carriers. Proton torpedoes and concussion missiles, launched by fighter and bomber platforms, surpass turbolaser cannons in terms of attack angle and power. However, they can be intercepted. I believe that even a Shenshi-class battleship will face significant challenges if the opponent's bombers target its engines with a few proton torpedoes. Rest assured, the research and development of the Eternal-class super aircraft carrier is progressing steadily, Arroyo Barlow replied. We have also made great strides in carrier-based aircraft technology. The Protoss have agreed to hand over the technology for the next-generation interceptor to us. As they conversed, the Apocalypse-class battleship began moving towards the designated test site. On the bridge, hundreds of crew members were busy performing their duties. Among them were robots, as well as humans, Solarians, Granites, and other races. The level of automation on battleships in EVE is very high. Additionally, these battleships are generally specialized and have a single function, so they do not require a large number of crew members to operate. For example, the Apocalypse-class battleship requires only 200 crew members to operate at a minimum. However, to carry out missions effectively, it is necessary to arrange for reserve crews, engineering teams, damage control, and a Marine Corps composed of 500 combat robots to maintain order and prepare for emergencies. During combat, an Apocalypse-class battleship has a crew of 4,000 people, plus 1,500 robots of various types. The difference between the Galactic Empire's warships and the Dawn Principality's warships is evident in their crew configurations. The Imperial I-class Star Destroyer, the main battleship of the Galactic Empire, requires more than 30,000 crew members, including an integrated legion of 9,700 people and 72 carrier-based aircraft. In comparison, the Divine Demonstration class is much more streamlined. Designs like the Divine Apocalypse and Hell's Angels are not intended for atmospheric operations. Now, please allow me to demonstrate the powerful firepower of the Apocalypse-class battleship, the flagship laser array, Arroyo Barlow said. Ahead are the 3 Jaeger-class battleships we captured in the previous battle. These battlecruisers will serve as target ships for this test. Adhering to the principle of waste utilization, we have disassembled and reused all parts of these 3 Jaeger-class ships except for the reactor and shield system. He turned to the operator and commanded loudly, "Start the test. Activate the Jaeger-class shields at full power. The ship will immediately enter combat mode and prepare to charge the main gun." When not speaking to Tang Xiao, Arroyo Barlow's speech was rapid and efficient. Under the operator's control, the Shenxi-class battleship began to turn its hull sideways, presenting its side to the target. This design is a characteristic of this series of battleships, which is completely different from the Galactic Empire's battleships that utilize full firepower when facing the enemy head-on. As orders were issued, 3 circular devices on both sides of the Shenxi-class battleship began to extend outward, forming 3 cylindrical shapes on each side. This is the flagship laser array equipped on the Shenxi class. The combat posture of this flagship laser array extends into a cylindrical array hundreds of meters high, with this ultra-powerful laser array installed above. This advanced design has moved beyond the scope of traditional turrets, creating a more formidable firepower platform. Power and no direction limitation. Charge, target locked, ready to fire. Arroyo Barlow glanced at Tang Xiao and gave the order with a wave of his hand. At that moment, Tang Xiao saw a few flashes of light from the 3 flagship laser arrays on one side. The flashes were so quick, almost fleeting. Tang Xiao, with his focus and the aid of the foe, RCE, noticed them, but an ordinary person wouldn't have even seen such a flash. However, on the sensors, the 3 Jaeger-class battlecruisers, with their shields fully deployed, began to explode and catch fire. Within seconds, they twisted and deformed under the extremely high-temperature energy and then exploded. This is the flagship laser array, ultra-high-power X-rays excited by the flagship X-ray crystal, Arroyo Barlow explained. Tang Xiao was astonished. In his original concept, if the main gun of a Shenxi-class battleship were to fire, it would be so powerful that it would seem like it could destroy the world in an instant. He imagined something like the 500-meter caliber super-electromagnetic gun of the Ragnarov-class Titan battleship, the supermatter electromagnetic gun of the Cole-class battlecruiser, or the Yamato cannons of the Behemoth-class battlecruiser, powerful, devastating, and dramatic when fired. However, the fire from the Divine Apocalypse-class battleship now only flickered for a moment and then disappeared. Not only was there no dramatic special effect, but the attack target was also obliterated so quickly that you couldn't even see the color of the emitted light. Since this is a laser array, doesn't it need continuous irradiation? Is that it? Tang Xiao frowned, feeling skeptical. He even suspected Arroyo Barlow was lying to him. Arroyo Barlow shook his head. If you mean like the main gun of the Higla-class battlecruiser, which continues to illuminate the target for 3 to 5 seconds every time it fires, then that is insufficient power. For a truly powerful laser weapon, even an irradiation of 0.001 seconds, as long as the power is sufficient, can destroy everything. With this kind of instantaneous irradiation, there is no possibility of dodging, and a lock means a hit, unless the opponent can unlock the fire control system like a Jedi. Tang Xiao nodded doubtfully, his brows still furrowed. Arroyo Barlow sensed the confusion. For Solarians, it was somewhat difficult to understand the mentality of a layman like Tang Xiao watching the excitement, so he didn't quite grasp why Grand Duke Liming looked unhappy. Finally, a human scientist approached Tang Xiao and said, "Your Majesty, perhaps we can try using the Apocalypse-class flagship laser array to bomb an asteroid." Half an hour later, as he watched the asteroid turn into countless pieces of lava and explode, Tang Xiao laughed heartily. He patted Arroyo Barlow on the shoulder and said, "Ha ha! I can already imagine the Imperial-class Star Destroyer being destroyed like a chicken or a dog in front of the apocalypse." Chapter 1975, The Gift of Killing. Looking at the asteroid turned into lava in front of him, Tang Xiao was finally satisfied with the flagship laser array installed on the Shenxi-class battleship. This was exactly what he wanted. After all, he couldn't be blamed for wanting something spectacular. He wasn't a professional. He just hoped to see huge and splendid fireworks, not low-key flashes. For the Solarian people's way of thinking, the loss of 3 Jaeger-class battlecruisers in an instant was the best explanation. But Tang Xiao had even wondered whether Arroyo Barlow had installed bombs on those Jaeger-class ships in advance. Blowing up an asteroid would be equivalent to setting off a big firework, and that would make him happy. In fact, Tang Xiao had stopped meddling with the data of these battleships a long time ago. Back when he first traveled through time, the management work wasn't as busy. He could still spend his days in the engineering department, examining the spaceships from the game and his dreams. He even personally participated in the test flight of the Phantom Fighter. At that time, he was very familiar with the various data and performance of the Phantom Fighter. But now, as the Kingdom of Dawn continued to expand, his work became increasingly busy. The battleships from these games no longer held the same novelty for him. Even if the Spear of Adon, which he had once drooled over, was placed in front of him now, his first reaction would be to consider how much territory it could gain for the Principality of Dawn. At this point, he no longer included the data of a specific warship in his considerations. For a battle, he only needed to listen to the opinions of the general staff and make a macro judgment on the outcome. Therefore, this National Day gift from the Solarian people was really just a gift to Tang Xiao. The Divine Apocalypse-class battleship was merely a token to please the Duke of Dawn. No matter how powerful Tang Xiao's power of death was now, it was still the power of the dark side. His interest in killing far exceeded that of others. No matter how rationally he thought from a national level, he couldn't be absolutely calm. Therefore, Tang Xiao was more concerned about how much destruction the weapons his subordinates gave him could cause and how big the fireworks would be. It's no wonder he was dissatisfied with the fleeting attack method of the flagship laser array of the Apocalypse-class battleship earlier. Tang Xiao looked at the majestic holographic projection of the Divine Demonstration-class battleship again, thought for a while, and asked, "What about the particle light spear? If the particle light spear can be installed on the Divine Demonstration-class battleship, wouldn't it be better?" Arroyo Barlow quickly shook his head and waved his hands, saying, "You must not do this. The length of the particle lance system is more than 800 meters, and it can only be installed on the long axis of the battleship. For the Apocalypse-class battleship, this would become superfluous equipment. On one hand, adding the particle lance system would make the structure of the battleship more fragile. On the other hand, the Apocalypse-class fights sideways, and its basic posture in battle is to move around the enemy. At this time, particle light spears mounted on long shafts are useless." He pointed to the 6 huge cylindrical flagship laser arrays extended from both sides of the battleship in the holographic projection and said, "Actually, you see, the size of these 6 flagship laser arrays is not much smaller than the particle lance. The volume is equivalent to about half of the particle lance. In the simplest way, it is equivalent to installing 3 sets of particle lances. Moreover, after discussion, we also agreed that the disaster-class battlecruiser should continue to be used as the particle lance carrier platform. This way, the disaster class can focus on staying behind the battlefield to provide fire support without having to consider other issues." Tang Xiao nodded, frowning, at the battleship data displayed on the screen. He asked, "Just now, you said that one Apocalypse-class battleship can withstand the attack of 20 Imperial-class Star Destroyers? The long axis of the Imperial-class Star Destroyer is 1,600 meters, compared to the Apocalypse-class with a long axis of 320 meters and a height of 1,400 meters. The volume is about 1/7. Can this produce such a huge advantage?" "This requires mentioning another supersystem of the Divine Demonstration-class battleship," Arroyo Barlow replied, seemingly anticipating Tang Xiao's question. "Actually, you should also be curious why the Divine Demonstration-class battleship is so huge, yet it has only 6 flagship-level laser arrays. On one hand, it's because this laser array is really massive. On the other hand, it's because we installed this battle equipment." "What is this? Specially used for fighting?" Tang Xiao asked. "You can understand this battle equipment as a means of overloading," Arroyo Barlow explained. "After activating the battle equipment, the battleship's reactor will be overloaded. At the same time, the energy of the entire battleship will be increased through countless electronic interfaces. The system is reintegrated, and through a series of electromagnetic field magnetic pole conversions, all the energy of the warship is concentrated on the combat module. For example, the flagship laser array or the module that supports resistant armor. Under such circumstances, the Divine Demonstration class battleship will become an indestructible and invulnerable super battleship. Arroyo Barlow clicked on the holographic projection. The projection of the entire battleship turned red, and the dense energy transmission lines within it began to show very intense activity. Look, this is the battleship when the battle equipment is activated. In this state, the firepower and protective capabilities of the Apocalypse class have doubled, reaching a quite terrifying level. In this state, one Apocalypse class can contend with 20 Imperial-class Star Destroyers. So, severely damage 20 Imperial-class ships and then leave? Tang Xiao pointed at the projection and asked. No, not really. The main reason for what I said before about escaping unscathed is that in this state, the Divine Demonstration class battleship cannot guarantee the destruction of the target. It can only severely damage the opponent and then repel it, because after the battle equipment is activated, the Apocalypse class battleship will lose its ability to move, Arroyo Barlow explained. After all, battle equipment is not just about redistributing energy. This equipment can even mobilize the energy in the hyperspace engine at the same time. This will have a negative impact on the ion field of the battleship. Whether it is a hyperspace jump or a sublight engine, it cannot be started. Well, or it is in a forced shutdown state. Even after turning off the battle equipment, it needs almost an hour to restart the engine and regain mobility. Tang Xiao was extremely satisfied with this. This is equivalent to a piece of equipment that will never stop fighting. If the Divine Apocalypse can be directly inserted into the opponent's fleet formation, and then the battle equipment can be turned on, then... Yes, it is the situation you are thinking of. If I were the commander of the opponent's fleet, I would definitely cry, Arroyo Barlow said proudly. Very good, Arroyo Barlow. You did give me a very good gift. Tang Xiao nodded with satisfaction and patted the other party's shoulder. As I said to you before, I'm not sure when a war will break out, but I am very sure that this war will come, must end with my overall victory. His voice became dark and menacing. Leaning into Arroyo Barlow's ear, he whispered with a ferocious smile, "How many lives will be lost under the Apocalypse-class battleship? I can't wait to find out." Tang Xiao laughed maniacally as he left the bridge and boarded his shuttle. Back on the shuttle, a communication awa eyed him. The holographic projection of Helmut Zemo, the chief minister of the cabinet, appeared. With great respect, Zemo said, "Your Majesty, the envoy from Chisland has arrived. They are waiting in the drawing room of the Grand Duke's palace." Having just enjoyed the spectacle of the Shenxi-class battleship's fireworks, Tang Xiao was in high spirits. I was wondering when the Chiss would arrive. Tell them to be patient. I will be there shortly. The journey from the Cave Beale planet to the Dawn planet took almost an hour, as only sublight engines could be used. When Tang Xiao finally returned to the Grand Duke's mansion on Dawn planet, he found the Chiss envoys standing in the living room, looking cautious and respectful. At the front of the delegation were two Chiss, a man and a woman, both appearing to be in their 40s or 50s with an air of distinction. The man, tall and imposing, seemed to have a military background. "Ha! Welcome, guests from afar!" Tang Xiao laughed heartily as he approached, extending his hands. Ignoring the formalities of state etiquette, he put his arms around the shoulders of the two leaders and led them inside. "So you are from the Sipla family and the Naruto family?" "Ha! Excellent. Very good." The man from the Naruto family, taller than Tang Xiao, did not resist and seemed comfortable. However, the middle-aged woman from the Sipla family was visibly uncomfortable with Tang Xiao's informal behavior. She tried to pull away, but Tang Xiao's grip was firm. She could only follow with a livid expression. Tang Xiao, aware of the Sipla woman's discomfort, glanced at her subtly, a cold smile playing on his lips. "I heard that all the people in your family's cabinet have given up their names and call themselves after the family. This is quite unusual for me," and he said with a smile. "But today, I'm in a very good mood. Now that you are here, let's have a drink first." Your Majesty the Grand Duke, we, the woman from the Sipla family, tried to protest, hinting at Tang Xiao's inappropriate behavior, but it was futile. Tang Xiao dragged them to the banquet hall, where the rest of the Chiss envoy followed at a respectful distance, unsure whether to approach or stay back. A lavish banquet awaited them. Tang Xiao pressed the two leaders into their seats and sat between them, smiling. You know, I have been waiting for you to come here for a long time. Chiss people. Ha ha! Come, let me toast this glass of wine to the Chiss people first. Ha ha! He forced wine glasses into their hands and, without waiting for them to drink, downed his own glass. The Sipla and Naruto family representatives had no choice but to follow suit. Tang Xiao then poured himself another glass and filled theirs as well. For this second glass, I pay tribute to the invincible Severance, the Admiral of our Kingdom of Dawn. He drank it all in one gulp. At the mention of Severance Tan, the Sipla family's expression turned awkward. Severance Tan's former Sever family. When the Sever family was destroyed, the Sipra family was actually involved. In the Keys territory, the number of ruling families fluctuated between 3 and 12, but now there are only 9. This drastic change indicates the fierce struggle between families within the Keys territory. Tang Xiao was undoubtedly aware of what happened when the Sever family was destroyed, and Severance Tan would have certainly informed him. Therefore, when she brought up Severance Tan at this moment, it made the Sipra family extremely anxious. They were unsure of Tang Xiao's intentions. The Naruto family, on the other hand, didn't care. They were pleased to see the Sipra family in a difficult position, so they laughed and drank their wine heartily. Tang Xiao turned his head, narrowed his eyes, and looked at the hesitant Sipra family members who were unsure whether to drink their wine. He spoke slowly. What's wrong? Does the Sipra family think that the wine of the Dawn Principality is not to their taste? Or do you believe that a low-skinned human like me is not worthy of drinking with you? The Sipra family member's hand shook, almost spilling the wine. Without any further hesitation, she tilted her neck and drank the wine in one gulp. She thought to herself, just kidding, whatever Tang Xiao says goes. Even if this cup is poison, I have to drink it. Ha! Tang Xiao laughed heartily and poured them a third glass of wine. This time, he raised his glass and said, for our third toast, we should honor Miss Ro Naruto, Rear Admiral of the Galactic Empire. Pfft. The Naruto family member was about to toast, but upon hearing this, he couldn't hold back and spat out the wine he had just drunk. Reacting quickly, he jumped up and took out a handkerchief to clean the spilled wine on the table. However, to his astonishment, the sprayed wine seemed to come alive, floating up out of thin air. It formed a trickle in the air, and every drop flew back into his wine glass. Chapter 1976, The Bogri Incident. Tang Xiao let out a hearty laugh, patting the shoulders of the Naruto family. They say it's difficult to recover from overflowing water, but it doesn't seem that difficult here. The Naruto family looked at the wine in their glasses. There were still some impurities floating in the once delicious wine, some from his own saliva, and some brought in from the table. His face turned a little pale, but he gritted his teeth, raised his head, and drank the disgusting glass of wine. At this moment, the Naruto family and the Sipra family exchanged glances. They realized that the Grand Duke of Dawn was not as easygoing as he had initially seemed. Seeing the two of them finish their glasses of wine, Tang Xiao's seemingly playful and cynical smile vanished. He glanced coldly at the two of them, put down his glass, and walked towards the other end of the dining table. He didn't walk very fast. Only then did the Chisi representatives notice that the table where they had just been eating was a massive long table, more than 10 meters long. Tang Xiao walked to the other side of the long table and sat down on the throne that belonged to him. He crossed his legs slightly and placed his hands on the armrests. Behind him, 2 enormous flags of the Principality of Dawn slowly unfurled. The flags had a red edge and a blue background, with a white Milky Way cantilever in the middle, the flag of the Principality of Dawn, the fourth civilization. The man sitting in the middle was no longer the jovial figure who had laughed and invited them to drink. He was now the controller, ruler, and dictator of the power represented by this flag, Grand Duke Liming, Tang Xiao. Do you know? It took the Cheesy people 3 years before they were willing to come here and drink the glass of wine I offered. Sometimes, it makes me wonder if I am a failure, Tang Xiao said slowly, a cold smile on his lips. His sharp eyes scanned the Chiss representatives, making them feel as if they were being cut by sharp swords. I just received a very interesting gift. I think you probably don't want to see that thing appearing in Cheesy territory. The Naruto family and the Sipla family broke out in cold sweat, unsure of what to say. They didn't know what the gift Tang Xiao was referring to, but judging by his tone, it was definitely something very, very bad. More importantly, the 2 glasses of wine that Tang Xiao had just invited them to drink, and the 2 names he mentioned, were extremely ominous hints. Severance Tan and Misro Naruto. These 2 names meant that the Dawn Principality could intervene in the family affairs of the Cheesy territory. Whether under the guise of avenging the Sev family and rebuilding their glory, or accusing the Naruto family of colluding with the Galactic Empire, it was enough for the Dawn Principality's fleet to break through the Stargate and reach the planet Shizla. Yes, the Stargate. The Chislan might not fear the Galactic Empire, but they had to fear the Principality of Dawn. The Galactic Empire could not pose a direct threat to them, but the Principality of Dawn could. This was why the representative of the Chiss people stood here so humbly. Grand Duke, Your Excellency. The Naruto family initially wanted to say His Excellency the Grand Duke, but quickly changed their words mid-sentence. Cheesy Ling has lived a life without contention in the chaos for thousands of years. We are indeed not ready to face this galaxy. The Sipla family added, moreover, signing this agreement also means breaking the thousands of years of laws in the Chisland, allowing our fleet. Their current feelings were mixed. 3 years ago, when the Dawn Principality's exploration fleet arrived at the edge of Chiss territory, everything was set in motion. In hindsight, they realized that the arrival of the Dawn Principality was not a case of inviting trouble, nor could it be resolved by hiding and acting like ostriches. Even if Admiral Chiara had not communicated with the exploration fleet, the fleet's location was already outside Chiss territory. From that moment, the Kingdom of Dawn was well prepared. With the terrifying technology of the Stargate, their invasion of chaos was simply unstoppable. The Chiss territory was not the only civilization in its starfield. This starfield was a relatively stable part of hyperspace in the unknown starfield, and even without contact with Chiss territory, there was a high possibility of encountering other civilizations. As discussed in the first cabinet meeting about the Dawn Principality, they should feel fortunate that the Dawn Principality came directly to them. The construction of the Stargate was completed within 5 standard months, connecting the abandoned planet Massos on the edge of Chiss territory and the capital of the Dawn Principality, Dawn Planet. When the first Dawn Principality fleet arrived in Chiss territory through the Stargate under the guise of a delegation visit, the Chiss people had no choice. Despite this, Chiss territory still resisted surrendering directly to the Principality of Dawn. They were unwilling to become mere vassals. Meanwhile, the Principality of Dawn adhered to a diplomatic strategy of influencing but not intervening, allowing the loose alliance between the 2 parties to continue for 3 years. But now, things were different. Tang Xiao sat on the throne and sneered, "Can't you initiate a fight? Ha!" The colonists on the planet Bogorai don't think so. The Borglay planet incident, it was an accident. The Naruto family broke out in cold sweat. This incident was the reason they traveled all the way through the Stargate to Dawn Planet. The political significance of the Chiss sending a delegation composed of the 2 largest families to the Dawn Principality was very clear. This would strengthen the political connection between Chiss territory and the Principality of Dawn. Given the huge gap in strength between the 2 sides, this approach meant that Chiss territory would gradually become a vassal of the Principality of Dawn and would no longer be able to resist. The Borglai planet was originally supposed to be desolate. After Chisland and the Principality of Dawn signed an agreement and began clearing out planets eroded by the god of rot, Mongol, the Dawn Principality sent a small fleet to Chisland for reinforcements. At Chisland's request, this fleet was not too powerful, but included more than 20 Crusader-class frigates for orbital bombing, plus several Cole-class battlecruisers for escort. With the Chiss Defense Fleet as the core and the Dawn Principality Fleet as support, both sides began clearing out the planets where Mongar Mongol appeared. Initially, things went relatively smoothly. As cooperation deepened, the fleet sent by the Dawn Principality grew larger. Eventually, there were 10-kilometer-class battleships permanently stationed in Chiss. One day, the Chiss Defense Fleet cleaned up a planet called Borg-Re based on data from their internal database. This planet was said to have several ships hijacked by Mongar Mongol, had the potential to escalate into a full-blown interstellar conflict. The Mongar Mongol threat was already a dire situation, but now the Chiss Defense Fleet and the Principality of Dawn had inadvertently provoked one of the most formidable and enigmatic civilizations in the unknown star territory. The Mongar Mongol, with their insidious ability to split into countless tiny filaments that could penetrate deep beneath the soil, were nearly impossible to guard against. This made them a persistent and pervasive threat. Over on Levick Planet, the former capital of the Xilu Empire, the situation had deteriorated significantly over the past 3 years due to the continuous appearance of Mongar Mongol infected individuals. Despite the presence of tens of millions of B-1 combat robots patrolling the planet, the number of people purified from Mongar Mongol infection had exceeded 1 billion in just 3 years. Given this context, orbital bombing was deemed the most appropriate method for dealing with Borg-Re, a desolate planet likely haunted by Mongar Mongol. Under the orders of Chiss Defense Fleet Admiral Eliz Alalani Ziara, the Chiss Territory Dawn Principality Joint Fleet initiated an orbital bombardment. The Crusader-class frigates of the Principality of Dawn, designed for low-intensity orbital bombing missions, unleashed their destructive power, creating mushroom clouds on the planet's surface. The bombardment was scheduled to last for over a week, with the combined fleet remaining in place to guard the operation. However, on the third day of the bombardment, the fleet intercepted a distress message originating from Borg Thunder Planet. This unexpected development revealed the presence of colonies on the planet. Admiral Chiara promptly ordered a halt to the bombing and conducted a comprehensive scan of the planet. The scan revealed 7 small colonies beneath the surface, 5 of which had already been destroyed by the orbital bombardment. The situation worsened when 2 days later, a small fleet of 5 cruisers arrived, claiming that the destroyed colonies belonged to the Grisk hegemony. This revelation stunned Admiral Chiara. The Grisk hegemony, a powerful and mysterious civilization in the Chislan starfield, was known for its unfriendly demeanor and formidable strength. The Grisk people, considered a legendary species, led a nomadic starship civilization, making their establishment of colonies highly unusual. As Admiral Chiara reported the incident to the Chislan Supreme Cabinet, tensions escalated. The commander of the Grisk hegemonic fleet, who had come to investigate and accuse, contacted the Dawn Principality. A heated argument ensued between the Grisk commander and Case T. Maxwell, the deputy commander of the 2nd Exploration Fleet. Neither side was willing to back down, and the confrontation grew increasingly intense. The situation reached a boiling point when the Grisk hegemonic fleet opened fire first. In response, Lieutenant General Brent of the Principality of Dawn ordered the Cole-class battlecruiser's supermaterial electromagnetic gun to retaliate, quickly tearing the Grisk cruisers to pieces. Admiral Chiara was on the verge of a breakdown as she witnessed the unfolding chaos. The aggressive actions of the Grisk hegemony and the retaliatory strike by the Principality of Dawn had set the stage for a potentially catastrophic conflict. With the Mongar Mongol threat still looming and the Grisk hegemony now involved, the Chiss Defense Fleet and the Principality of Dawn faced an unprecedented crisis. The delicate balance of power in the unknown star territory was at risk, and the consequences of this confrontation could be far-reaching and devastating. This will definitely never end. No, this is not a problem that can be solved by settling accounts. This is simply the beginning of a war initiated by the Chiss leader. The Borg-Re incident has overturned all the traditions of the Chiss for thousands of years. The Chiss people's national policy and foreign strategy have always been based on defense and preemptive strikes. They are absolutely unwilling to provoke powerful enemies in the unknown regions of chaos. This cautious approach is a significant reason why the Chiss have developed to this day and possess what can be called the strongest force in chaos. But now, the Chiss have actually started a war. This is a subversion of their millennia-old tradition. Admiral Chiara immediately called for a shuttle to Vice Admiral Brent's flagship to ask why they opened fire on the battleship of the Grisk hegemony. However, Lieutenant General Brent told him that the other party fired first. The Grisk hegemony will not care about who fired first, Admiral Chiara retorted angrily. He quickly led the fleet back to the Chiss territory's capital, the planet Hisla. On the way, Lieutenant General Brent nonchalantly told General Chiara that there was no need to be afraid because the Chiss territory was now protected by the Principality of Dawn. That night, the top cabinet of the Chiss held an all-night meeting. The result of the meeting was that the Cipra family and the Naruto family were immediately dispatched to visit the Dawn Principality through the Stargate. At the same time, Admiral Chiara mobilized all the power of the Chiss defense fleet to strictly guard the border to prevent sneak attacks by the Grisk hegemony. Note 1. Misro Naruto is Thrawn. In formal situations, he should be called by his full name instead of his core name Thrawn, so I will use it often in the future. Note 2. The Grisk only exist in novels, and there are no pictures, so I don't know what they look like. Let me explain why there is always some repetitive content every day. The main reason is that it is difficult for me to write while working. Recently, there seems to be some improvement in my work situation. A leader who treats me well has taken office, which makes me feel that I can still pursue something. So my work enthusiasm has been quite high recently. When I'm at home, I usually start writing after I put my son to bed. I usually take him for a bath at 9 o'clock. After the bath is finished around 9:30, his mother takes over to put him to sleep, and then I start writing. Generally speaking, 2 chapters of 4,000 words take about 2 to 3 hours, and it takes longer if there are interruptions. So I often can't finish writing until after midnight. To maintain perfect attendance, I sometimes repeat a little content, but I can usually finish and update around 12:30. Therefore, it may often affect the reading quality of friends who subscribe for the first time. Please forgive me. Chapter 1977, Legendary Race. Hey! Tang Xiao sneered. So, tell me, what is the purpose of your visit? Are you here to remind me that this war started because the commander I sent was attacked by the enemy? Did you retaliate during the shelling? No, we don't dare. That's not what we mean, the Naruto family quickly explained. We hope that the Principality of Dawn can send troops to help us eliminate the Grisk hegemony. The Chisi leader is willing to offer all the rewards we can provide. Tang Xiao was not swayed by their plea. He asked coldly, "You want us to send troops to destroy the Grisk hegemony and then receive rewards from you?" I understand. He suddenly burst into laughter, but his expression quickly turned ferocious and terrifying. He raised his hand, and an invisible force immediately strangled the neck of an assistant in the delegation. Under the influence of this deadly force, the assistant was drained of all life in just a few seconds, becoming a mummy. Tang Xiao tilted his head and looked at the Naruto and Cipla families. His expression turned cold again as he spoke slowly. The Principality of Dawn sends troops to eliminate the Grisk hegemony, so the Chisi territory won't need to send troops to attack, allowing you to maintain your traditions. Is that right? At this moment, the Naruto and Cipla families were terrified by the power Tang Xiao displayed. The Naruto family, being from the military, managed to hold their ground better, while the Cipla family member fell to the floor, barely holding back from fainting in fear. No, that's not what we meant. Your Majesty, the Grand Duke, the Naruto family quickly explained loudly. But Tang Xiao didn't listen. His tone was icy. You should put away your petty thoughts. Cheese people, you never seem to understand why my exploration fleet headed directly towards Cheese. Do you really think my people are wandering aimlessly? You had contact with the Galactic Republic during its overseas exploration plan 20 years ago. He raised his hand again, and another assistant was turned into a mummy by the invisible force. No. Please. The Naruto family began to beg. It's not difficult for me to get the records of the Galactic Republic. Chiss. Tang Xiao continued, his expression as calm as if he were discussing the weather, which made it all the more terrifying. Since I sent out the exploration fleet, you have only two paths, surrender or destruction. I gave you a choice, but it seems you prefer a middle path. So now I will tell you, there is no middle way. His voice sounded like a demon's. Another assistant was killed by him. What? The Sipla family member screamed uncontrollably on the ground. She wasn't afraid of death, but this terrible, quiet method of killing filled her with an uncontrollable fear. However, as soon as she screamed, her throat was strangled by an invisible force. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't make a sound and was already suffocating. I beg you, Grand Duke. The Naruto family knelt down with a thud and said loudly, Chisi is willing to send out all our fleets to bring Grisk's hegemony under the rule of the Principality for the sake of the Grand Duke. All the terrible pressure around them disappeared instantly, and a warm smile appeared on Tang Xiao's face again. The force on the Sipla family member's neck also vanished, and she lay on the ground, breathing heavily. Ah, Chisi people, you have made the right choice. Tang Xiao walked down with a smile, approached them again, and once more personally filled the room with his presence. Tang Xiao raised his glass and declared, Let us toast to the Principality of Dawn. Notably, he made no mention of the Chisi territory. It was as if he was implying that from this moment on, the Chisi territory was part of the Principality of Dawn. The Naruto family didn't hesitate and drank their wine in one gulp. However, the Sipula family member was visibly pale and trembling, looking as if she had just been rescued from drowning. She couldn't even hold her wine glass. The Naruto family quickly stepped in, holding her hand and helping her drink the wine in one go. Despite this, she choked and coughed, and the Naruto family member gently patted her back until she calmed down. Meanwhile, a cleaning robot had already tidied up the area. The Naruto family then stepped forward and addressed Tang Xiao. Your Majesty the Grand Duke, it's not that the Chisi territory is unwilling to send troops. The enemy this time is exceptionally powerful and strange. If we send troops rashly, we might inadvertently strengthen them. Our technology in Chisland is not advanced. We lack combat robots, and all our fleets are manned by crews. When facing enemies like the Grisk hegemony, combat robots are the best choice. Tang Xiao's expression softened slightly. Oh, you do have a way with words. If you had explained this earlier, it would have been fine. Why did you send such an incompetent person here? He waved his hand dismissively. Tell me, what is the Grisk hegemony like? The Naruto family took a deep breath, realizing they had passed the first hurdle. They knew Tang Xiao had been testing them, but they hadn't expected him to be so powerful, ruthless, and murderous. From his earlier demeanor, it was clear that if they hadn't immediately clarified their position, he might have killed their entire delegation. The Principality of Dawn had previously maintained a distant and neutral stance towards the Chisi territory, understanding that as long as the status quo was maintained, Chisland would never be unified. However, Tang Xiao's aggressive stance this time was due to the provocation from the Grisk hegemony, leaving the Chis with no other option but to comply. The Naruto family regretted their initial attempt to use wordplay to achieve their goal of having the Principality of Dawn send troops while Chisi territory provided the funds. This way, Chisland wouldn't have to break its long-standing rule of striking first. However, Tang Xiao quickly demonstrated the dire consequences of trying to deceive him. Your Majesty the Grand Duke, to be honest, we know almost nothing about the Grisk hegemony, the Naruto family admitted. Tang Xiao's smile turned cold. You know all the details about Mongar, but you claim to know nothing about the Grisk hegemony, an enemy you consider a formidable match? Do you not realize the consequences of trying to deceive me? The Naruto family remained serious and solemn. He gestured to an assistant behind him. We wouldn't dare deceive you, Great Grand Duke. Please look at this. An assistant quickly retrieved a storage device from the clothes of a deceased colleague who had been killed by Tang Xiao earlier. The cleaning robot had already cleaned up the body, and the assistant handed the storage device to the Naruto family. The Naruto family presented the storage device with both hands and said, "Please take a look. This is what we have." Tang Xiao frowned as he examined the holographic projection. "Are these cadaver samples and DNA test results?" "That's correct. These samples were extracted from the wreckage of the 5 cruisers we destroyed," replied a representative from the Naruto family. They had learned to communicate effectively with Tang Xiao, often using inclusive language like "we" to foster a sense of unity. On the Borglai planet, whether it was the Chiss fleet or the Principality fleet, they were all considered part of their collective forces. From the wreckage, we extracted DNA from a total of 17 different races. "We are confident that we haven't missed any," the Naruto family representative continued. "So you're saying the Grisk hegemony is a multiracial union?" Tang Xiao was surprised. Even so, 17 races seem excessive. Even the Galactic Republic, which once had thousands of races in its security forces, would limit the number of different races in an army to avoid communication and logistical issues. Typically, there would be no more than 3 races, and they would have similar habits. The Naruto family representative shook his head. "No, Lord Grand Duke. The Grisk hegemony consists of only one race, the Grisk people." "Mercenaries?" Tang Xiao speculated. At least when discussing military matters, the usually unpredictable Duke of Dawn seemed relatively normal. The Naruto family representative continued. "This is the point I want to make. The Grisk people are considered a legendary species in chaos. In other words, each individual among them is as powerful as a demigod." Tang Xiao sneered. "Are you trying to find an excuse for your incompetence? If a race of demigods truly existed, they would have conquered the galaxy by now. If they were so powerful, why were those cruisers so easily destroyed by us?" "Among the 17 types of DNA, there is no Grisk DNA," the Naruto family representative clarified. "We have compared all 17 types of DNA and identified them. There is no unknown DNA, so there are no Grisk people among them. Just tell me directly, what is the strength of this race?" Tang Xiao was growing impatient. "In fact, we know almost nothing about the Grisk people. No one has ever seen them. Only the fleet of the Grisk hegemony roams this star field. They are aggressive, warlike, and arrogant, with no fixed location. We believe that the Grisk hegemony is likely a starship civilization composed of a small core group and a large number of vassals," explained the Naruto family representative. "So, the Grisk hegemony is very active, but you've never seen a living Grisk person?" Tang Xiao realized something was amiss. It is said that the fleets of the Grisk hegemony are vast, sometimes blocking out the light of stars. Each Grisk person is said to be a demigod-level existence. They are powerful, brave, and capable of twisting people's wills and souls. If someone falls into their hands, even their memories and past can be taken away, the Naruto family representative elaborated. "I think you're telling a fairy tale," Tang Xiao remarked skeptically. "This is the only record we have about the Grisk people," the Naruto family representative said, producing another memory. "We sent out the army in the early morning. This was our last strength. But when the star rose again, our army came back. No, this was no longer our army. We don't know what the Grisk look like. Maybe they don't exist at all, or maybe everyone who appears before us is a Grisk. From the beginning of the war until now, we have been fighting against ourselves. But we know from some of the people who have returned, the Grisk call themselves gods. 3 people can control a country, and 100 people can control an entire planet. They play with people's wills, twist their souls, and tamper with their memories. Billions of people under the control of a few Grisk. They are coming towards us. Here, there is no resistance, no objection, no conflict, and no hope." The voice abruptly stopped, and Tang Xiao's expression turned extremely solemn, even a bit grim. If what the voice claimed was true, that 100 individuals could control billions or even tens of billions of people on an entire planet, then this Grisk man was akin to a demigod in any fantasy or science fiction narrative. The Naruto family was not mistaken. "Can they use brain waves to control other races?" Tang Xiao asked. "Judging from the results, yes, but we have no idea how they do it," the Naruto family replied. "Just like what happened before on the planet Borglai. Captain Keith Maxwell had a quarrel with those people who were controlled. As we know, those people are quite intelligent. At least they can still fly spaceships and argue even when they are controlled. But even when we dissected their corpses, especially their brains, we found no abnormalities. They are just controlled, that's all. We don't even know if there are people controlled by the Grisk hiding among us. Chapter 1978, The Reluctant War. Tang Xiao pondered for a while. During the communication on his invisible headset, the teams behind the cabinet, the general staff, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs were closely following the conversation and providing Tang Xiao with advice. For instance, when Tang Xiao suddenly killed several assistants of the delegation, it was actually Helmut Zemo who had advised him to put some pressure on the CHIS delegation. Tang Xiao interpreted this pressure as killing people. He then asked, "So, have you had any contact with the fleet of the Grisk hegemony?" "I have been in contact with them many times. Their warships are very monotonous, with only 2 or 3 types of main battleships, but there are indeed many of them, and they don't even know how to retreat during combat. Even if the opponent is stronger, they will not retreat," the Naruto family representative said. "Is it because they are all being controlled?" Tang Xiao asked with a frown. "This is one aspect. On the other hand, we can also see from the behavior of the Grisk hegemony that the Grisk people are extremely conceited and will never accept failure. They will always be the ones to launch the attack," the Naruto family representative explained. "However, they generally do not provoke races that are stronger than them. They tend to accumulate their own strength secretly. Of course, if they are provoked, they will not hesitate to use the most extreme measures to retaliate." "Oh?" Tang Xiao became interested and asked, "Do you think the Grisk hegemony also thinks you are stronger than them?" "We have judged that the military and industrial capabilities of the Grisk hegemony are relatively backward. This is also an important basis for us to believe that they are a starship civilization. Their warships have not been updated for a long time. So according to our simulations, we believe that as long as the war process is limited to fleet combat, we have the ability to repel the fleet of the Grisk hegemony." "But," the Naruto family representative looked embarrassed. "But what?" Tang Xiao asked. "However, if we really go to war with the Grisk hegemony, we will face many internal problems. As mentioned before, we don't know if there are people who have been controlled hiding among us, and the possibility is very high. So once we decide to go to war, we will first be in chaos," the Naruto family representative said. "Moreover, I am afraid that the Grisk people have hidden themselves in many places, and we cannot exterminate them at all." He took a deep breath, full of fear for this civilization known as the legendary species, and then said, "For example, if a Grisk lurks in a certain city or colony, what will happen? They will easily distort the memory and cognition of everyone in this city, making them think that the Grisk in front of them is just an ordinary resident. I can't think of any way to find out such a lurking person." "Like Mengar Mengar?" Tang Xiao suddenly connected these two unrelated existences. The Naruto family representative was stunned for a moment, then understood what he meant, nodded, and said, "Yes, it's the same as Mongol. Maybe we can defeat them, but we can never eradicate them." Tang Xiao snorted coldly, his mood suddenly becoming very bad. He waved his hands, signaling to the CHIS delegation that they could leave. After the Naruto family supported the Sipula family and wisely exited the banquet hall, Tang Xiao's gloomy expression could no longer be concealed. He slapped the huge banquet table with a bang, and the powerful force instantly smashed the more than 10-meter-long table into countless pieces. "Zemo, this is your plan. You actually found such a troublesome enemy for me." Tang Xiao growled. A secret door opened at the back of the banquet hall, and Zemo, who was on standby inside, hurriedly ran out. He said eagerly, "Your Majesty, the Grisk hegemony is indeed beyond our expectations. I just told the people from the Saberson family. In touch, they said they never expected that the colony on the planet Borglai was actually controlled by the Grisk hegemony," one of the aides reported. "Colonies are not just toys. How could you not tell which civilization this huge colony belongs to?" Tang Xiao demanded angrily. Zemo, sweating profusely, lowered his head and replied, "According to the Saberson family, they always thought Borglai was a small, marginal colony. In that direction, there's the Kilji, the Kingdom of Light, Illumin. The Kingdom of Light, Gilji, is a theocratic country, and they include a large number of races that have converted to their religion, the Path of Enlightenment. At that moment, the door of the banquet hall opened, and key personnel, including Chief of General Staff Chi Jian, Prime Minister Francis Underwood, and Minister of Military Intelligence Saratan Moss, hurried in. This banquet was essentially a state negotiation between the Fourth Civilization and the Chiss, so it was impossible for Tang Xiao to handle it alone. Everything had been arranged in advance. We have further confirmed. The Grisk hegemony rarely establishes colonies. All the vassal races they control have basically abandoned their home planets, so they should be considered starship civilizations. The Saberson family never expected their colony to be bombed, Chi-Jian reported, also sweating profusely. Indeed, if what the Naruto family just said is true, then this conspiracy of Dawn Planet seems to have backfired. The Borglai Planet incident was actually a conspiracy by the Dawn Principality, intended to push the Chiss into a war and then use this war to pull the Chiss into their own ranks. Led by the Military Intelligence Department, the Dawn Principality secretly contacted the Saberson family, which was at odds with the Cipra family. Their original plan was for the Sabersons to secretly tamper with the data about the corruption god Mongar in the Chizlan database, adding the planet Borglai to it, making everyone think that this planet had been infected by Mongar. The Borglai planet is actually an inconspicuous planet, but it may indeed have an owner. It seemed like a perfect target for launching a plan. The reason why the Naruto family, who is in charge of the military, was not approached about this matter was based on strategic considerations. As a family in charge of the military, the Naruto family would naturally look forward to such a war. However, if the Dawn Principality took the initiative to approach them and expressed its willingness to drag the Chiss into the war, the Naruto family would definitely not agree. Therefore, they had to go around in a circle, start a war by cooperating with other families, and then deepen the cooperation with the Naruto family during the war. This would further expand the influence of the Dawn Principality in the Chiss territory and ultimately promote the attack on the Chiss, making them vassals of the Principality of Dawn. The plan seemed well thought out, but the only problem was that they never expected to offend the Grisk hegemony instead of the Kingdom of Light, Gilji. What the Naruto family said is right. We have no way to completely eliminate the Grisk hegemony. They are too strange. Moreover, are things here going to turn into genocide like those in the Shilu Empire? Prime Minister Francis Underwood looked particularly unhappy. This kind of national-level diplomatic affair naturally required Francis to participate, but he was learning about such a magical and troublesome race for the first time. According to what the Naruto family just said, we should indeed send the robot army there, Chi-Jian nodded in agreement. That's right. Find Geth and let Geth take care of the Grisk hegemony. Francis Underwood quickly agreed. Tang Xiao glanced at him coldly, and Francis's words stopped abruptly. He felt the displeasure of the Grand Duke. Dawn was breaking. Geth? Do you think the Geth are omnipotent, my dear Prime Minister? Tang Xiao asked coldly. No, it's just that they are more efficient than Ord, in-airy combat robots. Francis lowered his head and answered. This idea is really foolish, Your Excellency Prime Minister. Helmut Zemo interjected with a strange look. Don't you know that the Geth only ally with the Grand Duke? Their partnerships, including those with the Kali people and the Interstellar Banking Association, are all based on the Grand Duke's requirements. In other words, if one day the Geth suddenly decide to take action and blow up the planet Mahito, it's entirely possible. This is about a war. We can't be choosy. Francis Underwood didn't dare to disobey Tang Xiao, but he was very unhappy with Helmut Zemo, a sycophant, and he was still willing to fight back. To fight against the Galactic Empire, we need the Geth. To help with the industrialization of the North, we need the Geth. To fight against Mongar, we need the Geth. Now that we are at war with the Grisk hegemony, we need the Geth again. So why not just commit suicide and let the Grand Duke take the Geth to conquer the galaxy? Zemo retorted with a cold snort. This is just the most appropriate use of the most appropriate power. Francis Underwood countered. If our people are controlled by the Grisks, they will use this as a bridge to infiltrate our principality. The threat from the Grisk people is even greater than Mongar. Your Excellency, although it is indeed inappropriate to continue involving the Geth, Francis's opinion is still very pertinent. We cannot allow the Grisk people to have the opportunity to infiltrate, Chi-Jian said. It's not necessary. It sounds like the Grisk people rely on mind control or brainwave control, and we also have experts in this area, Minister of Military Intelligence Saraton Moss said gloomily. Ha ha ha! That's right, Moss. That's what I mean, Tang Xiao laughed. Inform the Protoss about the Grisk's hegemony and let them handle it. Then, establish a branch fleet equipped entirely with B-1 combat robots and commanded by T-Series tactical robots. Chi-Jian nodded. Should we let the Protoss command this fleet? No, the command of the fleet is given to the Chiss. The Protoss only need to focus on dealing with the Grisk. Besides, they probably don't have much experience commanding our fleet. Tang Xiao waved his hand and said to Zemo, Go tell the Chiss that this fleet will be led by their defense fleet commander, Admiral Chiara. And remember, she is from the Eliz family, and we need to do the opposite. Alienate the Eliz family. I know how to arrange it, Your Majesty the Grand Duke. Helmut Zemo bowed deeply, a satisfied smile appearing on the corner of his mouth. That's how it is, Tang Xiao said, standing up coldly. We planned a war, and now the war has started and the goal has been achieved. However, some targets for the war are inappropriate. Although we are reluctant, since the war has begun, let's not hold back. Follow the original plan and get everything we want in the unknown star territory. As you wish, Grand Duke. Zemo bowed deeply. Others also saluted and watched Tang Xiao leave. After receiving the news that the Principality of Dawn decided to send troops, the representatives of the Chisi territory, the Naruto family, and the Sipla family finally breathed a sigh of relief. But at the same time, they also felt endless sadness. This dispatch of troops meant that Chisi Ling would no longer be able to escape from the clutches of the Dawn Principality. The Naruto family specifically sought out relevant personnel from the Principality of Dawn to ask what the size of a squadron would be based on the naval establishment of the Principality of Dawn. They got the answer, the size of the squadron. The fleet consisted of 10,000-meter battleships, 30 cruisers, other heavy battleships, and 150 small and auxiliary battleships. Only then did the Naruto family realize that the current garrison of the Dawn Principality in Chis territory was also a squadron. This meant that the Principality of Dawn was committing the power of 2 squadrons to this war against Grisk's hegemony. This number was comparable to the current strength of the Chis territory's navy. However, considering that the warships of the Dawn Principality far outperformed those of the Chis territory, this force was already unmatched in the unknown star field. It was clear that the Dawn Principality was determined to win this conflict. Simultaneously, the Naruto family learned that the Principality of Dawn had requested Admiral Alani Ziara of the Chis Defense Fleet from the Eliz family to command this fleet. This outcome was somewhat unexpected but pleased the Naruto family. They saw it as a gesture of sincerity from the Principality of Dawn. Additionally, they were aware that the Principality of Dawn did not have a particularly good relationship with the Eliz family, which further improved their perception of Dawn's decision. A week later, Tang Xiao received a notification from Helmut Zemo. Your Excellency the Grand Duke, the Star Spirits have arrived, Zemo announced. Oh, they finally arrived. Which tribe is here? Who is their leader? Tang Xiao inquired. Zemo responded, The Aquile tribe has come, led by the high-ranking Templar Rassadon. Chapter 1979. The Real Legendary Race. High-Level Templar. Tang Xiao's expression grew serious. The development of the Protoss had become quite independent, and their relationship with the Fourth Civilization was more distant compared to other races that had joined. However, they were still aware that the Galactic Empire was not a benevolent entity. It was ruled by dark and evil Sith Lords. On a national level, Tang Xiao had at least done some humane things. Additionally, the Protoss knew that their sparse population and slow growth meant they couldn't develop further without the support of the Dawn Principality. Although the Protoss' attitude wasn't very friendly, they remained firmly on the side of the Principality of Dawn. They were willing to meet any needs presented to them. Generally speaking, they were in a state of listening to instructions, but not necessarily following propaganda. Currently, the Protoss population had reached over 30,000, most of whom had grown from embryos. Even with the perfect embryo technology of unknown origin in the Mothership, the fastest growth cycle for the Protoss was over 20 years, making population growth a significant issue. The Protoss no longer resided in the desolate area of the Del Rey 2 satellite. They had found another satellite about 8 seconds away from the Del Rey galaxy. Although it wasn't large, it was habitable, so they began rebuilding their homes there. Interestingly, they named this satellite Dawn. It was unclear whether they intended to confront the Principality of Dawn or if they were using the name to signify a new beginning for their race. To distinguish it from the Dawn planet, the Principality officially called the Protoss planet the Dawn satellite. The Protoss were not limited to the former Psylocke tribe and Saligar tribe. Protoss from other tribes had also awakened and begun to perform their duties according to their tribe's functions. The Psylocke tribe returned to their old ways, handling internal affairs, psychic powers, and priestly duties, while the Saligar tribe, as the tribe of the Dark Templar, was responsible for intelligence. Another tribe, the Auriga tribe, became active, focusing on industry and manufacturing, especially shipbuilding. The high-level Templar who arrived this time, Razdian, belonged to the Aquila tribe, a fighting tribe responsible for combat. Although Razdian wasn't well known in the Starcraft plot and the Aquila tribe sounded unfamiliar, another member of this tribe was the renowned Archbishop Artanis. Due to the population explosion among the Protoss, more and more named Protoss were awakening from the Mothership's hibernation cabins, including legendary figures. The Protoss were indeed a perfect race, with many members at the legendary level. Over the past few years, whenever Tang Xiao saw a legendary figure who met the conditions for awakening, he knew they were likely Protoss. He held a lottery mentality, hoping to awaken Artanis and Tassadar, the two big names. Compared to other Protoss with rigid moral codes, Artanis and Tassadar were more flexible in their dealings. Tang Xiao felt they were easier to communicate with. Although Zakaris of the Psylocke tribe was also a flexible Protoss who had been with Tang Xiao for a long time and held no hostility, the Psylocke tribe was becoming less influential as more tribes awakened and grew stronger. Unfortunately, Artanis and Tassadar had yet to appear. It was likely due to the current objective conditions. The fourth civilization and the Protoss are not enough. However, to say that there isn't a single familiar Protoss would be incorrect. In recent years, another significant figure among the Protoss, as stubborn as a mule, has indeed been awakened: Phoenix. Tang Xiao is naturally very familiar with Phoenix, a Protoss who plays a crucial role throughout the plot of Starcraft. But precisely because of this familiarity, he is also extremely wary. The awakened Phoenix is still in the state of a zealot warrior. He has not yet been transformed into a dragoon after being injured, nor has his soul entered the purifier after death. Even so, when he stood before Tang Xiao felt the terrifying pressure emanating from this Protoss hero. Based on Tang Xiao's understanding of Phoenix, he believed that Phoenix was likely to harbor strong hostility towards him. Sure enough, Phoenix didn't engage in much conversation with Tang Xiao, exchanging only a few casual greetings. The general sentiment was clear: I won't fight you if you don't bother me. When it came to external affairs, Phoenix acted in the interests of the Protoss. In short, the two sides remained in an alliance. If someone attacked, Phoenix would naturally come to help. After this brief interaction, Phoenix requested a shuttle and left. Tang Xiao then asked Zakaris about Phoenix. Zakaris explained that Phoenix did not belong to any specific tribe. He was the guardian of the temple belonging to the Protoss. This time, Phoenix accepted awakening, most likely because the Psylocke tribe had rebuilt the Protoss temple. Zakaris also informed Tang Xiao that due to the power of death and the dark side force within him, Phoenix would regard him as a blasphemy against the stars, and naturally, he would not look favorably upon him. However, Zakaris assured Tang Xiao that, given the Selak tribe's responsibility for sacrifices, Phoenix had a relatively close relationship with them and would help ease relations with the Dawn Principality as much as possible. Phoenix's attitude made Tang Xiao very unhappy, but he understood that most Protoss could comprehend the bigger picture and would not act irrationally. Diehards like Phoenix were rare. For instance, the Protoss had sent a high-level Templar without hesitation to address the matter of provoking the legendary species of the unknown star territory, the Grisk hegemony. Despite the Protoss now having a population of over 30,000, the number of high-level Templars still did not exceed 10. In Tang Xiao's opinion, each of them could reach or even surpass the level of a Jedi Master, though their focuses differed, each having their own strengths. The door opened, revealing a Protoss wearing golden light armor and a blue cloak, slowly floating forward. That's right, floating. This Protoss was always suspended half a meter above the ground. Not only that, as he floated forward, although his speed was not very fast, afterimages constantly formed around him, making it impossible to pinpoint his exact location. However, this state could not be hidden from Tang Xiao. He squinted his eyes and soon understood that this Protoss used his powerful spiritual energy to place himself in a state between three-dimensional space and higher-dimensional space. In this state, ordinary attacks in the material world could not touch him, completely different from the game where he would die at the first touch. Entaro Adun. I am Razdian, a high-ranking Templar of the Akira tribe. I greet you, Grand Duke of the Dawn. A humble, gentle voice resonated in the minds of everyone around him. In fact, this method of communication among the Protoss was no different from a normal conversation, except for the absence of audible sounds. Different Protoss had different intonations and musical scales during telepathy, which could be used to distinguish between them. Phoenix's telepathy was notably less potent than that of many other Protoss. It sounded rich and full of power. Following Razdian were 10 other Protoss fanatic warriors clad in golden heavy armor and 4 Protoss scholars in robes. After entering the gate, Razdian exited his state of reality and illusion, no longer floating in the air. Instead, he walked over on foot and bowed politely before Tang Xiao. I'm glad to see you responded quickly, Star Spirits, Tang Xiao said, facing the high-level Templar warriors of the Star Spirits. He put away his usual cruelty and unruliness, adopting a more serious demeanor. According to our intelligence, we may have encountered a very strange and powerful race, the Grisk people. If the intelligence is accurate, such a race should be punished for the abuse of telepathy, Razdian replied. But the force of this world is magical and powerful. If it can breed such a race, there must be reasons. We will explore the truth. What I'm actually more worried about is that after you come into contact with the Grisk people, you will also be controlled, Tang Xiao said coldly. He clearly sensed the agitation among the Protoss fanatic warriors, who were visibly angered by his words. However, Razdian remained composed. A flash of light appeared on the braid-like nerve cord on the back of his head, and the Protoss fanatic warriors were immediately calmed. Such a situation will never happen, Your Excellency the Grand Duke. The Protoss always respect the soul, but it does not mean that we are fragile to the power of the soul, Razdian assured. So what are your opinions on this expedition to Grisk hegemony? Tang Xiao asked. Sending a robot army is a wise choice, Razdian said slowly. The minds of other races are too fragile to resist the mind control of the Grisk people. The fleet we dispatch will be completely controlled by combat robots. The Chiss fleet will also be dispatched to assist. And I need to remind you that according to our agreement with the Chiss territory, the commander-in-chief of this expedition will be Chiss Admiral Chiara, Tang Xiao said. If she has any opinions on combat operations, I hope you can fully consider her views. Na Azum, we have no objection, Razdian replied. Then there are the Grisk people, the combat target. They have almost never appeared in front of others, which will be the biggest problem. In addition, I definitely don't want the Grisk people to use their mind control power to infiltrate us, Tang Xiao continued. I will find them. In front of my spiritual power, they have no way to hide, Razdian said confidently. Find them, and then what? Destroy them? Purify them. A cruel smile appeared on the corner of Tang Xiao's mouth. A race that abuses its power should be deprived of the right to survive, Razdian replied calmly. Then, you should also know about the Shilu Empire. For that kind of civilization that uses evil technology and does not hesitate to kill many races, my answer is punishment with destruction, Tang Xiao said. The same is true for the Grisk people. Even if one Grisk infiltrates here, it could have disastrous consequences, perhaps leading to the death of millions. For such a race, will you Protoss still not choose destruction? Razdian's tone and emotion remained unchanged. Towards the Silu people, the attitude of the stars is, the crime is not worthy of this. What about those races that were destroyed by the Silu people? Why were they slaughtered? Tang Xiao challenged. He enjoyed presenting such moral paradoxes to others, especially to these noble Protoss. What we can see and what we can influence is the present, not the past. There is no crime that should be borne by an entire race, even the Shilu people. We do hope that you can stop the crimes against the Shilu people and give them a chance to survive, Razdian said calmly. Razdian said, this is the foundation of Daol, helping and supporting the weak. What about a dangerous race like the Grisk people? Tang Xiao asked again. Everything depends on real contact with them, Razdian replied, his answer more flexible this time. Tang Xiao had been trying to determine the state of these star spirits when they were awakened, or in other words, the era they belonged to. In the world of Starcraft, the values displayed by the Protoss varied significantly across different eras. From the current observations, except for special individuals like Phoenix, most of the awakened Protoss seemed to be in the state they were in when Archbishop Artanis defeated Amon and rebuilt Protoss civilization. This was a good thing. The Protoss of that era were, to a large extent, the best version of themselves. They did not cling to outdated traditions and dogmas, and they had shed their meaningless arrogance. Although still proud, they were also more tolerant. It was precisely because of this that such star spirits were willing to form an alliance with Tang Xiao and accept his command, considering themselves at least as allies of the Fourth Civilization. Call the Chiss delegation over and let them meet their new friends, Tang Xiao turned and said to Zemo. Chapter 1980, The First Battle Against Grisk's Hegemony. Chiss led the delegation, which included members of the Naruto and Sipla families, to the reception hall. After a week of waiting, their anxiety and fear had reached a peak. Although Tang Xiao had previously agreed to send a fleet to assist them in their fight against Grisk's hegemony, there had been no response since then. No matter how they applied to continue the talks, there was no reply at all. This made the delegation even more apprehensive, as they were wary of Duke Ming, who was known for his ruthlessness. In the past few days, the Sipla and Naruto families even considered a disturbing possibility that the Dawn Principality might be contemplating an alliance with the Grisk hegemony, using the Grisk people's mind control abilities to rule chaos. The more they thought about it, the more plausible it seemed. With no means of direct communication with Qisiling, they were left to their own speculations, leading to near-nervous breakdowns. But now they were suddenly summoned to the drawing room. It was said that Grand Duke Liming had invited them, so they hurried over, as if they had received an amnesty. However, as soon as they arrived, they were stunned by the sight of a mysterious and powerful star spirit wearing golden armor standing next to Tang Xiao. Antaro Adun, guests from Chisland. I am Razdian, a high-ranking Templar of the Akira tribe. I will work with you to resolve the matter of Grisk's hegemony. I hope we can cooperate happily. Razdian's humble voice resonated in their minds. As soon as they heard the voice in their heads, the Sipla family members jumped up, almost screaming. Someone was actually talking directly into their brains. Who are you? Are you a Grisk? One of the Sipla family members exclaimed, their voice trembling. They had been in a state of turmoil for days, fearing that the Dawn Principality might ally with the Grisk hegemony to deal with Qisiling. Now a voice suddenly appeared in their heads, making them even more paranoid. Razdian said calmly, Please don't be afraid. I am not a Grisk. We are star spirits, the eldest sons of God. This is how we communicate. It is indeed an application of telepathy, but we do not abuse the power of the mind. Therefore, we will ensure that the Grisk hegemony is punished. The Naruto family was much calmer. They looked at Razdian with awe. They had never seen such a mysterious and elegant race. With his extraordinary temperament, golden armor, and luxurious blue cloak, Razdian truly looked like a god. The eldest son of God, the Naruto family member repeated blankly. You are here to help us deal with the Grisk hegemony? Are you also a member of the Dawn Principality? The race in front of them, claiming to be the eldest sons of God, appeared powerful. If they were all members of the Dawn Principality, the power of the Dawn Principality might be far more terrifying than they had imagined. We do have very close ties with the Principality of Dawn and Grand Duke Tang Xiao. Therefore, at the invitation of His Excellency the Grand Duke, we are here, Razdian replied. That means you will return to Chiseland with us? The Naruto family member asked. The fleet of the Principality of Dawn is ready and can depart at any time, Razdian said. Wait a minute. This is absolutely not possible. The Sipla family member, who had been shivering in the back, suddenly jumped up and said loudly, You and the Grisk hegemony are the same. If you are brought back to the Chiss territory, you will definitely bring all of us under control, just like the Grisk. Razdian responded, We will never abuse the power of the mind. Please rest assured, we are here to help you. This is a conspiracy. You are using mind control. The Sipla family member collapsed, pointing at Razdian and shouting hysterically, clearly terrified. Tang Xiao sat on his throne the entire time, an inexplicable smile playing on his lips as he watched the scene unfold like a spectator at a play. That's enough, yelled a member of the Naruto family. He walked over, placed a firm hand on the Sipla family member's shoulder, and said seriously, Calm down. This star spirit is an elegant gentleman and a powerful warrior. If he intended to harm us, he wouldn't choose this method. Without waiting for a reply, he turned to the assistants behind him and instructed, Please escort the Sipla family member back to the ship to rest. She has been under too much pressure lately. The assistants, understanding the gravity of the situation, quickly helped her away. The Naruto family member sighed. Despite the usual conflicts and stereotypes between their families, he recognized the Sipla family's leadership and wisdom. However, since arriving in the Principality of Dawn, her self-esteem and that of the Chiss people had been shattered by Tang Xiao. The sight of a race like the Protoss had pushed her to a nervous breakdown. This incident highlighted the high-pressure state the entire Chiss society had been under since the Principality of Dawn built the Stargate and forced its way to the outskirts of Chiss territory. The emergence of Grisk's hegemony had only exacerbated this tension. Your Majesty the Grand Duke, we will return to Chiss territory. With the help of the Star Spirits, we will defeat the Grisk hegemony and bring back news of victory, the Naruto family member said, bowing to Tang Xiao. Razdian nodded to Tang Xiao before floating back into the air and flying towards the door. The Naruto family and other members of the Chiss delegation watched in stunned silence, feeling a bit lost. Tang Xiao, who had been observing the scene, suddenly spoke from behind. Didn't you realize it? You Chiss brought this upon yourselves. The Naruto family member was shocked. He turned around to see Tang Xiao standing up from his throne and walking away. A month later, a squadron from the Principality of Dawn, led by the Protoss High Templar Razdian, sailed out of the Stargate and began recalculating the hyperspace route to the capital of Chissland, the planet Hisla. During this month, the Sipla family overcame their fears and began to accept the existence of the Protoss. Razdian proved to be an elegant and humble Protoss, communicating politely with the Chiss and sharing many stories about his race. Despite many Protoss memories perishing with their mothership, Razdian shared vague but epic scenes from the rise of the Protoss. By now, both the Sipla and Naruto families were genuinely impressed by Razdian. His strength and wisdom were unlike anything the Chiss had ever encountered. It's important to note that despite producing heroes like Grand Admiral Thrawn and Admiral Severance Tan, the Chiss territory is a closed and isolated race in the unknown starfield. Their days are filled with conspiracy, calculation, and internal strife. The Protoss have always been different from the beginning. Severance Tan and Thrawn, for instance, were both expelled from the Chiss territory because they were not tolerated. Yet, they flourished on the vast stage of the galaxy. Their glory has little to do with the corrupt Chiss territory. Remember, when Thrawn was young, He was almost expelled from the Chiss Naval Academy due to false accusations of cheating. After leaving the Stargate, the Cipra family arrived at Razdian and said with a smile, "This is already the edge of the Chiss territory. The planet Mossos is where the Dawn Principality's forward base and Stargate are located. It stands as proof of friendship between Chissland and the Duchy of Dawn." She believed that the Star Spirits were also Tang Xiao's subordinates, so her flattery towards the Principality of Dawn had no effect on the Star Spirits. However, she did not stop because of Razdian's indifference. She understood the power of the Star Spirit, and from her family's perspective, had to find a way to gain Razdian's approval. She hoped to win over the Protoss. It would be ideal if this joint operation between the Dawn Principality and Chysland could be quietly turned into a joint operation between the Cipra family, the Dawn Principality, and the Protoss. Out of respect and gratitude, our Cipra family will show our most sincere friendship and enthusiasm, and we hope that our cooperation can last for a long time, the Cipra family continued. "I have made arrangements." The Naruto family glanced at the Cipra family, sneered, and ignored them. Instead, they addressed the T-Series tactical robot next to them, commanding it to control the spacecraft. "Integrate the fleet's navigation system into our system. Hyperspace navigation here is very chaotic." As he said this, a little Chiss girl walked over. She looked about 10 years old, her face still childish. But compared to other Chiss, this little girl had a more sacred temperament, like a saint. She said to the T-Series tactical robot, "Let the navigator jump according to the coordinates I mentioned. There must be no mistakes, or we will be engulfed by hyperspace turbulence." "This girl has powerful psychic powers," Razdian said, looking at the little girl. The girl seemed a little afraid of the voice that appeared in her head. She took a step back and hid behind the Naruto family. "She is a Skywalker and has third vision, which can help us locate ourselves in the chaotic hyperspace channel," the Naruto family explained. "We Chiss rely on the help of the Skywalkers to navigate the chaotic hyperspace channels and extend our control to dozens of surrounding planetary systems. I think she is too young to take on this important responsibility. She needs more training," Razdian said. He thought for a moment and asked, "In the galaxy, there once was a powerful Jedi warrior named Anakin Skywalker. Did he also serve as a navigator here?" The Naruto family was stunned and explained, "I'm not sure about this. However, Skywalkers can only be women, and the third vision of many Skywalkers gradually disappears after adulthood, starting from the age of 13 to around 22 years old, so we must continue to find and train new Skywalkers." Razdian stared at the little girl for a while and said calmly, "Your way of raising her is wrong. I think I can do something for these girls. If we can get the guidance of the Star Spirit, it will be the greatest honor for our entire Chiss territory." The Naruto family quickly thanked him. Razdian waved his hand gently, and a ray of spiritual energy flashed in front of his eyes. He continued, "I already know the method of this Skywalker. Just tell me the coordinates, and I will complete the navigation work." "Okay," the Naruto family agreed completely. Impressed by the Star Spirit, the Chiss nodded in agreement without a single question. After obtaining the coordinates of the Hisla planet, Razdian approached the navigator's console. It took him only a few seconds to calculate the hyperspace route and input it into the navigation computer. This feat once again astonished the Chiss, as such navigation work would have taken Skywalker at least 10 minutes to complete. The Naruto family didn't even have time to inform the capital of the good news. The fleet quickly activated the hyperspace engine, entered the hyperspace channel, and sped towards the planet Hisla. When the fleet of the Principality of Dawn emerged in the outer orbit of Hisla, accompanied by a burst of white light, they were shocked to find the capital of the Chiss territory on high alert. Even the Endless-class super aircraft carrier of the Second Exploration Fleet was present. Dozens of small spacecraft were wreaking havoc at high speeds just outside the planet. Their flight patterns were erratic and wild, as if piloted by madmen. These spacecraft desperately evaded pursuing warships and fired wildly at civilian ships near Hisla. Strangely, all these crazed spacecraft belonged to the Chiss leader. Note: Skywalker is the same name as Anakin Skywalker. Marshal Thrawn also expressed similar doubts when he first encountered Luke Skywalker in the original plot. Chapter 1981, Message from the Grisk Hegemony. What happened? Our capital was attacked? The Naruto family was in shock. High-ranking Templar Razdian's psychic navigation had been so efficient that he hadn't had time to contact the capital. However, what was displayed before him now was a battle taking place in the capital of Chizland. Although there were only a dozen small spaceships wreaking havoc, most of them civilian, the implications were terrifying. It takes a week to travel from the Stargate to the outside world, and the round trip takes 2 weeks. Including the stay on Dawn Planet for a little more than a week, it had been less than a month in total. The capital of the Chisi territory was under attack. Damn it! Deploy our fighter jets quickly. Shoot down those spaceships! The Cipra family shouted in desperation. Please be patient. Razdian's calm voice resonated in everyone's mind. These spaceships cannot pose a real threat. We have just arrived here, and the situation is unclear. Let the defense forces handle it. The Naruto family nodded. In reality, there was no need to worry about the current situation. Even the massive super aircraft carrier, the Eternal, was present, and there were only a dozen civilian spaceships. They likely couldn't even breach the Eternal's shield. As a family in charge of the military, they had wasted no time in getting the Dawn Principality to agree to send fleet reinforcements. They had also introduced the mysterious, powerful, and elegant race, the Protoss, to the Chiss territory's top cabinet. By this time, more than 10 spacecraft had been completely eliminated, and 3 of them were caught by the Eternal's tractor beam, rendering them immobile. Powerful electronic interference and viruses were directly input into the 3 spacecraft at close range. In just 1 minute, these 3 spacecraft were completely taken over by the Eternal. Both the Chiss Defense Force and the captain of the Eternal, Lieutenant General Brent, knew very well that in such a situation, capturing those alive was the best option. Without any delay, Razdian immediately took a shuttle to the Eternal super aircraft carrier with the Naruto family and others. Upon learning that the Protoss were coming, Lieutenant General Brent, the commander of the 2nd Exploration Fleet, and Captain Keith T. Maxwell, the deputy commander, came to the hangar platform to greet them. At the same time, Admiral Elise Al-Alani Ziara of the Chiss Defense Fleet, who had received the news, also hurriedly took a shuttle to the bridge of the Eternal. Although Admiral Chiara did not know what the Protoss were, from the information she received from the delegation, she understood that this was a race of no small importance and must be treated with the highest courtesy. Admiral Chiara already knew that she would be appointed as the commander-in-chief of the combined fleet of the Chiss Land and the Principality of Dawn, so she had to personally and immediately greet the high-level Protoss Templar. When the situation is so critical, there is nothing better than the sudden appearance of a high-level Templar from the Protoss. Lieutenant General Brent laughed, standing at attention and saluting, showing his greatest respect for the Protoss. Welcome, respected Protoss. Although Chiara was an admiral, he also stood at attention and saluted meticulously, saying seriously, I am Admiral Chiara of the Chiss Defense Fleet. It is an honor to fight alongside you, warrior of the Protoss. On the other side, Keith Maxwell did not neglect his duties. Although he was an explorer at heart, he still held a military position, so he stood at attention and saluted. Among the tribes of the stars and in the entire Principality of Dawn, high-level Templar warriors were highly respected beings. They were qualified to meet Grand Duke Tang Xiao of Dawn directly without prior notification. The warriors currently awakened on the Protoss side, despite their differing temperaments and styles, are all individuals of noble character. It has earned them high esteem among those in the Principality of Dawn who have had the fortune to meet the High Templars. I have heard about the Grisk hegemony, and that is why I am here. I will not interfere with the command of the fleet. I will concentrate on dealing with the Grisk people's mind control, Razdian said. However, I still suggest that when the fleet is dispatched, the commander should always be by my side, and he will be protected by me. Other warships need to be completely controlled by robots. I will implement this immediately, Chiara said. Perhaps we need to see the prisoners so I can assess the condition of the drivers, Razdian suggested. Those 3 spacecraft have been pulled in by the tractor beam. They are over there in the hangar. Lieutenant General Brent pointed to the other end. He waved his hand, and several Warthog off-road vehicles immediately drove over. It's nearly a kilometer away from here. Let's go by car. Chiara and the others boarded the vehicles, but Razdian and the 10 Protoss zealot warriors who followed him did not. Only 4 Protoss researchers got into a Warthog off-road vehicle. Let's go. The Protoss generally don't like our human mechanical vehicles unless they have to, Lieutenant General Brent said, nodding apologetically to Razdian. But I'm sorry, we were really unprepared. I never thought there would be Protoss coming here. It doesn't matter. Let's go. Razdian nodded. The Warthog immediately started and headed towards the other side of the hangar platform. To the astonishment of Chiara and the others, the 10 Protoss zealot warriors ran alongside the vehicle, keeping pace with it even as it traveled at a full speed of 60 kilometers per hour. Even more astonishing was Razdian. He floated in the air, maintaining a half-dimensional state that had already unnerved the Chiss people. Now, Razdian moved forward rapidly while floating, matching the vehicle's speed of 60 kilometers per hour. He maintained a standing posture, and his blue cloak did not even flutter in the wind. This indicated that the High Templar's state of being half in material space and half in high-dimensional space allowed him to ignore certain physical laws. As a soldier, Admiral Chiara immediately judged that if this Protoss wished, he could likely kill one of the Marines of the Chiss Defense Force without getting hurt. Arriving at the other end of the hangar platform, 3 civilian spacecraft were parked quietly on the ground. All electronic systems of the spacecraft were shut down, and hundreds of Marines from the Principality of Dawn had already surrounded them. "Open the door and be alert," Lieutenant General Brent ordered. The hatches of the 3 spaceships slowly opened, and all the Marines raised their weapons, aiming at the hatches. However, something strange happened. The people inside the spacecraft did not rush out to open fire or resist, nor did they find places to hide. They stood quietly at the door of the cabin, each holding a knife. These were all Chiss, dressed as passengers and pilots of the spaceship, but now they stood uniformly, expressionless. Their eyes were not dull. They looked at the Chiss people in front of them as if they were prey. "We are the Grisk Hegemony," they spoke in unison. "You seem to have not learned the lesson from the little fights before. So today, this message will be conveyed." "Let me make this clear to you," one of the figures said, their voice dripping with menace. The group of people all wore strange smiles and then continued to speak in unison. "You have been under our surveillance, the Chiss people and the Principality of Dawn. We know everything about you, including the Stargate on the planet Massos, and you know nothing about us. The Grisk Hegemony demands that you immediately lay down your weapons and surrender, compensate us for our losses, and share the passage to the Stargate. We will mercifully let you live. Otherwise, you will suffer our most brutal revenge." Ha 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 ha. They all burst into inexplicable laughter, a chilling sound that echoed through the room. "Don't think that the Stargate and your fleet can solve all problems. What happened today is to show you that Grisk's hegemony is invincible." Their faces twisted into ferocious expressions, and a weird laugh escaped their mouths. Suddenly they raised their hands and without hesitation slashed their own necks with the knives they held. However, in the next instant, a bolt of lightning flashed across the room. The knives were immediately attracted by the lightning, flying out of their hands and landing in front of Razdian. The people rolled their eyes and fainted, collapsing to the ground. The sound of dozens of table knives clattering to the floor filled the room. The events unfolded so quickly that almost no one had time to react. A member of the Naruto family pointed at the unconscious figures, at a loss for words. "They were indeed controlled, but I severed that control just now. They are no longer under the influence of the Grisk people." Razdian's voice echoed in everyone's minds. Admiral Chiara frowned and asked, "Do you have any clues about how they were controlled?" "Powerful, but barbaric," Razdian replied. "This is not direct control. The memories, minds, and even souls of these people have been forcibly tampered with and distorted. The Grisk people do not rely on sheer force to control them. Their method is more cruel, but less labor-intensive. Will these people have any lasting effects? Lieutenant General Brent inquired. I severed their connection with the controller, but their twisted souls have not been restored. I regret that I have no way to cure this yet. Perhaps when we understand more about the Grisk people, we can find a way to restore these individuals to their former selves, Razdian said. As he spoke, he waved his hand, and one of the unconscious people began to twitch and wake up. However, upon seeing the situation around him, the person immediately held his head and screamed, "You! What have you done? I can't hear the master's voice. What have you done?" "Calm down. We are here to help you." Admiral Chiara stepped forward and shouted, "No, my master! Give me back the master!" The person was hysterical, beyond communication, and had lost the ability to think rationally, as if the master was everything to them. "It doesn't seem possible to reason with them. Let's lock them up for now," Admiral Chiara ordered. "I will study their condition. Leave the battle to you." Razdian nodded. The Naruto family approached General Chiara and asked coldly, "What happened while we were away?" The relationship between the Eliz family and the Naruto family was strained, so Admiral Chiara's tone was equally cold. "Our outer colonies were attacked by the Grisk hegemony, but the loss was not significant. The attack was not by their main fleet," she replied curtly. Turning her head, she added, "The war has already begun." The Naruto family raised their heads and declared, "We have received enough assistance from the Principality of Dawn, and the fleet now in your hands is unprecedentedly powerful. With the help of the esteemed Protoss High Templar, I have only one request for this war: victory." "And what is the price of victory?" Admiral Chiara asked coldly. "There is no price, only a broader prospect," the Naruto family member replied. The Naruto family and the Sipra family took their delegation back to the cabinet to report on the visit. They also planned to discuss the future military, diplomatic, and political strategies for Chisland. Rastian, however, seemed completely uninterested in their political matters. He instructed the fanatic warriors to take the controlled individuals and prepare to leave for the flagship of this battle, the Eternal Super Aircraft Carrier. Due to its unique nature, the Eternal was deemed unsuitable for direct participation in the war with the Grisk hegemony and would remain in the rear to defend. General Chiara and Lieutenant General Brent returned to the command center to discuss the war strategy. Before the delegation set off, the Chiss territory had already declared martial law and sealed the borders of its outer colonies, prohibiting the entry of all spaceships. Despite these precautions, the border was still attacked. As demonstrated by the Grisk hegemony's previous actions, their fleet was elusive and lacked a clear direction. Several outlying colonies in the Chiss territory were attacked from different directions, forcing them to allocate a large number of troops to defend their borders. Chapter 1982, Starship Civilization? "This war cannot continue like this," Admiral Chiara declared, her tone grave as she gazed at the enormous holographic star map projected above the conference table. Red alerts flashed across the edges of the Chiss territory, indicating that nearly every border colony was under attack. Even some core planets were beginning to experience problems. Before the war began, the Chiss had never imagined that Grisk's hegemony would penetrate their territory so thoroughly. They even knew about the Stargate. Although the Principality of Dawn had sent reinforcements, bolstering the main fleet of the Chiss Navy, the situation remained dire. The reinforcements included the Eternal Super Aircraft Carrier, 10 attached cruisers, and a squadron from the Principality of Dawn, which comprised 10-kilometer-class battleships, 30 cruisers, various destroyers, smaller battleships, and 100 auxiliary spacecraft. Recently, the Principality of Dawn had sent an additional 10 battleships, 30 cruisers, and 150 small battleships. Despite this formidable fleet, navigating the unknown starfield remained a significant challenge. The biggest issue in the unknown starfield was the difficulty of hyperspace navigation, which complicated the transportation of materials across galaxies. Building a 1,000-meter-plus warship required resources from multiple planets. Consequently, many races and civilizations in the unknown starfield were confined to their home planets, unable to control more than one. Even if they mastered space navigation technology, their warships could only reach a few hundred meters in size. Any civilization capable of dominating the unknown star field had to possess the means to navigate across galaxies. This was true for both the human battery technology of the Xilu Empire and the Skywalkers of the Chiss. However, the Grisk hegemony had never shown itself directly, opting instead to harass the borders with their warships appearing almost everywhere. As a result, the Chiss fleet, despite its strength, could only operate within its own controlled area. Lieutenant General Brent frowned. Are you suggesting that the Grisk hegemony is a starship civilization? What's your reasoning? Admiral Chiara explained. So far, every civilization conquered by the Grisk hegemony has abandoned its home planet. Records indicate that they took all their people aboard countless spacecraft. Wherever they went, they left nothing but destruction and plunder, showing no concern for logistics. Most importantly, we have never found a planet they actually inhabit. Therefore, they must be a nomadic starship civilization. Lieutenant General Brent pondered this. But there are more than 10 civilizations conquered by the Grisk hegemony, right? Even if some are primitive, assuming each has a population of 1 billion, that's still 10 billion people. Do they have enough spaceships to accommodate them all? This could be a very grim situation, Admiral Chiara said seriously. The Grisk hegemony may have consumed these populations. Consumed them? You mean, like eating them? Lieutenant General Brent asked, raising his wrist to check his universal tool for information. Admiral Chiara nodded. It's a possibility we cannot ignore. The Grisk hegemony's actions suggest they might be using these populations for some unknown purpose, possibly even as a resource. Lieutenant General Brent's expression darkened as he considered the implications. We need more information. We must find a way to uncover the true nature of the Grisk hegemony and their starship civilization. The room fell silent as the officers contemplated their next move, the weight of the situation pressing heavily upon them. Actually, our database records a starship civilization known as the Quarians. They were defeated in a war with the mechanical race they created and were forced to become a starship civilization. However, their behavior seems to follow a different pattern compared to the Grisk hegemony, Brent explained. How so? Chiara asked. Living in a spaceship for extended periods causes serious psychological distortions in the residents due to issues with gravity, living space, and climate. Additionally, living in such a closed environment gradually degrades their immune systems, making them unable to adapt to the air containing microorganisms and basic viruses on a normal habitable planet. Population growth is also a significant problem. The Quarians maintain zero population growth and often send their people out to experience life on planets, preventing them from spending their entire lives in cramped spaces, Brent elaborated. Chiara frowned. The Grisk hegemony cannot be so fragile. They are highly offensive. Our database also records another starship civilization, the Visaris, Brent continued, finding another record. The Visaris are different. They possess weapons from their homeland, including an enormous super battleship with crushing military strength. The space inside their battleship is equivalent to a city. They can easily destroy a planet and use it as a mine for resources. With such power, they can launch attacks and become an offensive civilization. The Grisk hegemony is not that powerful. Otherwise, chaos would have been their back garden, Chiara said. Can't there be a middle ground? Stronger than the Quarians, but weaker than the Visaris? Lieutenant General Brent shook his head. Unfortunately, there is no middle ground. A starship civilization will either live in hardship or be extremely powerful and unstoppable. It all depends on what they manage to bring from their former homeland. No civilization has ever actively chosen to become a starship civilization. You mean, the Grisk hegemony may have a home planet? Chiara frowned. In the database of the Principality of Dawn, countless civilizations are recorded, including many starship civilizations. Some tribes of the Protoss also lived as starship civilizations until they regained their homeland, Lieutenant General Brent said. So I think our strategy may not be correct. You mean to take the initiative? Admiral Chiara was shocked. The Chiss people's conservatism was deeply ingrained. Her decisions were always based on stabilizing their position first. If the Grisk hegemony is a starship civilization, Their productivity is limited. If one battleship is destroyed, there will be one less. This defensive strategy is very beneficial to the Chiss territory. The Grisk's strange mind control ability has already caused chaos in the Chiss territory. The 9 ruling families are deeply afraid and constantly pressure Chiara to ensure their safety. But Lieutenant General Brent had a different perspective. The Dawn Principality had sent 2 squadrons, and they weren't just sitting and drinking tea on the planet Hisla, the capital of the Chiss territory. Chapter 1983. Taking the initiative. The Chiss are inherently conservative. This conservatism stems from their lack of natural enemies within their 3-acre domain in the unknown star field. Their ability to conduct hyperspace navigation through Skywalker's third vision allowed the Chiss to establish a vast force spanning dozens of habitable planets. This was possible in unknown star fields that generally lacked hyperspace navigation methods, often described as a dimensionality reduction attack. The real conflict among the Chiss lies within their own territory, between the ruling families. Currently, there are 9 ruling families, but this number has fluctuated, sometimes dropping to 3 or rising to 12, indicating the intensity of their internal struggles. Each family fears that if they launch a full-scale attack, other families will exploit the opportunity. There are many precedents for such scenarios. Consequently, the Chiss military theory has significant flaws. While they have a comprehensive officer training system, it is not as powerful as one might imagine. The Galactic Empire and the Principality of Dawn also have such systems. The difference is that the Galactic Empire is too vast and corrupt, preventing many capable individuals from being promoted and utilized. The Inner Circle's wealthy nobles control many aspects, leaving little room for talented people to develop. Despite this, the Galactic Empire's vast resources allow it to crush opponents through sheer industrial might. The Principality of Dawn, on the other hand, is straightforward and uncorrupt, offering many opportunities for talent to shine. However, they lack the time-honored traditions and experience, making their officer training less effective than that of the Chiss. Consider the 2 famous generals who raised the Chiss Naval Academy's reputation, Severance Tan and Thrawn. Their extraordinary talents were not appreciated by the Chiss Naval Academy, and they only flourished after being expelled. Severance Tan, recently appointed as an admiral by Tang Xiao, immediately led her fleet to Sarabin, an energy planet in the core circle. Her aggressive tactics were not taught by the Chiss Naval Academy. Chiara, the admiral of the Chiss Defense Fleet, is currently constrained by this conservative mindset. She believes in securing the border and launching a decisive battle only after locating the main fleet of the Grisk hegemony. The ruling families within the Chiss territory have strictly ordered her to follow this approach. Chiara, a former classmate of Thrawn, is a competent general. Despite her family's conspiracy to expel Thrawn, she maintains a good relationship with him. However, she is not Thrawn. She did not immediately see through the nature of the Grisk hegemony and take decisive action as Thrawn did in the original plot. The Grisk hegemony cleverly disguises itself as a nomadic starship civilization, maintaining an invincible position. However, they were ultimately defeated by Thrawn in the original plot. Now, although Lieutenant General Brent lacks Thrawn's genius, he has identified anomalies in the Grisk hegemony through the extensive databases of the Principality of Dawn. If they are not a starship civilization, then they must be highly productive. If we continue to defend within our own territory, the situation will only deteriorate, Brent stated. We must take the initiative and locate their home planet. But what you said is just a judgment. Although we don't know much about the Grisk hegemony, we have conducted research for many years there. Admiral Chiara asserted, there is a lot of evidence to prove that they are a starship civilization. Keith Maxwell interjected, the Grisk people even know about the Stargate. With such intelligence capabilities, it's not difficult for them to mislead us, right? In front of a powerful race that can control the stars, it's doubtful that we can gather so much information. This is nonsense. It will take me up to a month to build a solid line of defense. After that, we send warships to attack everywhere. Regardless of whether they are a starship civilization or not, they will be severely damaged by us, Chiara retorted. Maxwell countered, This also means that Grisk's hegemony lasts for another month. From the beginning of the war until now, they have been operating freely for nearly a month without us posing any threat. Now, with one more month, who knows what they could accomplish? Can you foresee that? You should know that if we send the fleet out, the ruling families in the cabinet may immediately deprive me of my command rights. Such a situation will not be allowed, Admiral Chiara said in a deep voice. That's why the Grisk hegemony is harassing us everywhere, even launching attacks in your capital. They want to make those fat-minded ruling families afraid. The more afraid these people are, the happier the Grisk people will be, because our powerful fleet has become a decoration, Maxwell said. Lieutenant General Brent added, "It is impossible to complete the construction of your so-called solid defense line. By then, there will be other loopholes. You have no idea to what extent the Grisk hegemony has penetrated the Chiss territory. So, the result is month after month until Chisland completely collapses. And once your social system collapses for the Grisk people who can control minds, it will be like a fish in water. Then, what are your plans?" Admiral Chiara was visibly shaken, but still had concerns. Razdian also said before that if we attack, we must be under his protection, and then all other battleships are controlled by robots. In other words, our other fleets can only be commanded by robots. That's a problem. Lieutenant General Brent touched his chin thoughtfully. If I were you, I would have all the fleets gather together and then attack with all the troops in any direction, Keith Maxwell suggested suddenly. Such blind actions cannot have good results. No matter what the Grisk people are planning, if we act recklessly, they will have countless ways to deal a fatal blow to us. Chiara objected. If they don't act, there will never be a flaw. And as soon as they start to act, there will be a flaw. Maxwell insisted. At this moment, a quiet voice echoed in their minds. I think you can try it. Chapter 1984, Treason. As soon as they heard the voice, Admiral Chiara and the others quickly turned around. They saw the Protoss High Templar, Razdian, floating over. His voice echoed in everyone's minds. I have already conducted some research on those prisoners and have some understanding of the psychic fluctuations of the Grisk people. I will accompany the army, and once the Grisk people appear before us, I will detect them immediately. So, you also agree with our plan to dispatch the entire main fleet to find traces of the Grisk people? Keith Maxwell asked. Doing something is better than doing nothing, Razdian replied. I reiterate once again that the Chisi cabinet will not agree to this plan, General Chiara said firmly. Lieutenant General Brent spoke slowly. Then, the Dawn Principality's fleet will carry out this operation alone. As for the Chiss territory matter, you can explain it to the Grand Duke yourself when the time comes. The Dawn Principality sent reinforcements not to guard the door for the Chiss, Keith Maxwell said with a smile. Admiral Chiara was silent for a long time before she slowly said, I understand. All our main fleets will be dispatched to attack in the direction where the Grisk people may appear. She was mentally prepared that once this order was given, she would become a traitor in the eyes of the Chissland. However, Chiara also understood that the traitors of the Chiss territory were not necessarily the traitors of the Chiss people. I thought you would at least keep your defense fleet behind, Maxwell remarked. It makes no sense. If the Chiss fleet cannot participate in this battle, we cannot bear the punishment of the Dawn Principality. Chiara glanced at him and then said, Furthermore, since we have decided to attack with all our troops, leaving a huge loophole for Chissland to attract the Grisk people to take action, we must be more resolute. That's good, but we still need to find a direction, right? Lieutenant General Brent asked Razdian. Can you sense the direction of the Grisk people? Unfortunately, no, Razdian said. Admiral Chiara suggested, My suggestion is to head towards the planet Krusti. If you still think I can command this fleet, of course. This is also an agreement between us, isn't it? Lieutenant General Brent replied with a smile. During one of the attacks on the colony of the planet Norris, we found some spacecraft from races near the planet Krustal. This is actually very strange because the distance between the planet Krustal and the planet Norris is very far, and their spaceship should not appear in Norris, Chiara explained. Considering the difficulty of hyperspace navigation in unknown star regions, this is indeed worth noting, Razdian said. I agree. Lieutenant General Brent nodded. Admiral Chiara's expression suddenly became extremely determined. She waved her hand and said loudly, "Assemble all fleets towards the planet Hizra immediately. In 3 days, I will lead the entire army to attack." If I am still here after 3 days, Admiral Chiara thought to herself. Following Admiral Chiara's order, the fleet that was originally scattered in 11 colonies on the edge of the Chiss territory immediately began to change direction and move towards the planet Hizra. Such an action caused an uproar on the capital planet Hizla, because this instruction from Admiral Chiara almost meant abandoning the border of Chiss territory. As if to confirm this result, after the defense fleet of the border planet Thrago withdrew, it was immediately attacked by some spacecraft. Some small warships left behind on the planet. Slug cooperated with fighter jets and fought desperately against these spacecraft, but a nuclear bomb still fell on the planet. Although this nuclear bomb did not hit the colonial settlement, it set an extremely bad precedent. What are you doing, Chiara? Get your fleets in position immediately. In the remote communication, the Inrokini family roared loudly. You are causing the fleet to neglect its duty. This is a very serious crime. Make up for this mistake as soon as possible while there is still a chance. Admiral Chiara's family, the Eliz family, declared sternly. We are in a state of war now, Chiara. Think carefully about what you are doing, the Chav family yelled angrily. The holographic projections of the representatives of the 9 ruling families of Chizland all appeared in the conference room. They all expressed one intention, to return the fleet to defense immediately. Regardless of the situation, these ruling families were always focused on preserving their own strength to dominate other families in subsequent internal conflicts. As for foreign enemies, that was always a secondary concern. I have left some small battleships and fighter formations in the border colonies to assist in defense. Now I need to concentrate all my strength to launch an attack on Grisk's hegemony, Admiral Chiara stated, standing straight with his hands behind his back in the middle of the conference room. Have you found the location of Grisk's hegemony? The Naruto family asked in a deep voice, their military instincts making them particularly sensitive to this issue. Maybe in the direction of the planet Crustal, Admiral Chiara answered. Maybe? The expressions of the Naruto family changed several times before they jumped up and roared. I knew it was a mistake to let you bastards of the Eliz family command the fleet. You took our fleet and the Dawn Principality's fleet on your baseless adventure. Now, no matter what, Chiara's abilities are much better than your cheating family, the Eliz family retorted. Even under such circumstances, finding trouble for the Naruto family was still their first choice. Stop this nonsense. The Cipra family, the largest family, commanded with authority. She loudly halted the meaningless family quarrel and then said coldly to General Chiara, Admiral Chiara, you should know that you are violating the constitution of the Chiss territory. The primary responsibility of the Chiss Defense Fleet is to ensure the security of the Chiss territory, but you failed to do this. Instead, you withdrew all the capital ships and left our colonies vulnerable to attack. I have my reasons, Admiral Chiara said in a deep voice. If we don't take the initiative, the Grisk hegemony's attacks will never end. We will only be defeated in the end. The Grisk hegemony is just a starship civilization. They have no chance of competing with us in terms of productivity, the Naruto family said sternly.